Do you mind if I should?
Well, thank you. So we've done a full agenda tonight. I'm not asked that we just keep things moving if we can, but I want everyone heard, whatever they have to say. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order. In terms of alternates, first up to be seated is Justin is absent and Marnie is absent, so we'll see Fred Gianelli and Nancy Hammerstrom. That's everybody who's in attendance. Oh no, Fred Gianelli and Nancy Hammerstrom are connected via Zoom. So any additions or changes to the agenda, I was contemplating moving things around a little, but I think if we leave things the way they are, it'll be fine, which is next item up would be the agenda meeting minutes of September 9th, 2025.
I have one comment on those.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
On page 4, at 8:20, Ricky is a left. Justin took over. So there were 2 subsequent votes. So the motion was passed 7-0, and in fact, it should be 6-0 because Rick is not here.
Okay. It's put on my record, I did review the minutes in detail, so I feel comfortable knowing what went on for the part of the meeting that I wasn't in attendance.
Sometimes the context of comments is part of the ballot, but it's accurate, so.
Yeah, we-
So I'll make a motion that why don't we make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as modified.
Second.
All those in favor? Discussion. Our members who are zooming in. Nancy. Your vote on the.
Yeah.
You're in favor, Fred in favor?
I'll be abstaining. I wasn't present at last meeting.
Okay, thank you, Fred.
I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. So we have a public hearing. It's a continuation of a prior public hearing, special permit application of John Wasowski. Did I get it pronouncing it?
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Okay. Joseph Pratt of Target Enterprises Incorporated for a laydown area with 0 Route 6 and also 223 Route 6, map 6, lots 25 and 27, a CM1 zone. The lot areas are 10 acres and 14 acres respectively. It's a public hearing was opened on September 9th, 2025 and continued to this evening. So is there any additional testimony from the applicants? Other than what you presented at last meeting?
Well, I think we covered it all, you know.
Okay, thank you. John, any perspective on this application? We had a number of questions that we had out there. I know that there was a request to seek advice on council on what about a range of authority, and some of that information may be privileged because it's legal advice and some is not. What do you feel you can share that is you're comfortable sharing in public?
Yeah, so I not to pass the buck on this, but Savannah had reached out to attorney Rich Robertson, Ken Slater on the matter. I think I can broadly summarize their findings, and Savannah can correct me if I'm wrong, that because this is under a special permit category, and the commission has the authority and responsibility to look to safeguarding the neighboring property values and the neighborhood harmony, broadly speaking, that the commission had some latitude to impose conditions that it felt were appropriate and necessary given the potential impact of the proposed use. They didn't get too specific, and we did have some back and forth about Um, the other property and the difference between activity and use, and and whether clearing is considered activity or clearing is considered use. We had a little bit of
You were
discussion on that,
referring
but
to it just about 223 right now.
in the case of 223, they felt that the authorities of the commission were fairly broad, particularly in the special permit category. But Savannah, I don't know if there's anything further you'd want to characterize about that.
Savannah?
The only thing I might add is that, it felt to me they felt that based on the commission's interpretation of adverse impacts of the proposed special permit, they could require screening, so similar to what John said, but kind of based on the adverse.
223 or also on lot?
So the comments were pretty broad, but it was my interpretation that it would all be included in this special permit, so like 223, 213, and 0 are all in one special permit.
Okay, because there's activity on all lots. Proposed. It's part of
That was
it.
my interpretation, they didn't specifically state that.
But yeah, I think the idea being to tie the conditions that you might be interested in applying to the proposed impact of the actual use proposal.
Okay, just for the record, can we get on the record exactly, so this is an application primarily for 223 Route 6. But there's activity proposed on both 213 Route 6 and 0 Route 6. Could we highlight in detail what the proposed activity is? I think it's, and this is a map just for everyone's, I took our GIS map and I highlighted the 3 different lots that are affected because I thought a more simple map would be easier to discern the relative parcels.
Rick, for quick correction, I don't think that this application that we're hearing, for Oswa includes anything on 213.
That's why I wanna
It does go on to, but it doesn't go on to 13.
That's my understanding also. So 213, this application, not for Oswald, but for Target Enterprises, is for activity on 223 and also the yard that's on 0. And also, yeah, the GIS doesn't label things with 0 on it. So, and again, this is a markup I did, hoping to share it with the public because I was looking at the engineering map and it wasn't clear to me how to explain to the public where the activity that's proposed was, and I thought John could highlight in approximate terms for the public on this map, more simplified map. So the yard that's proposed, can you kind of outline the area? That's what you need to. I'm trying to do it real time. Okay. Oh, better than me. Thank you, John.
I would say Savannah might know better. I think it's approximately this. There's very little on the 0 Roses Bridge or
Actually,
Zero
John,
Six.
I think it's just the opposite. John, it's just the opposite. There's more on the 0 lot than there is on the.
Is that right?
223. Yeah, I'm looking at the plan right now.
It's all on the other side of that drive.
Yes,
On the
sir.
northerly side?
It's on the north side of the drive.
To drag it up.
Towards the river.
Yeah.
And so that is is that a relatively accurate depiction of the existing drive that goes into the proposed?
Yeah.
And the building that's depicted there, is that the Target Enterprise building, or is that now being located farther north?
There's another building out here, like closer to the 223.
Okay. All right, we have the engineering map. I just thought this would be an easier way to reference things. Yeah. So we're down there up here.
So.
Okay. So the steel building is just 2,400 square foot steel building. Those are like it.
It's ingenious.
So the biggest, where was the new building?
That's the question.
Hey, John, could you bring up the engineering map? And just point out the newly constructed steel building?
Sure, just a second.
Okay.
Is it in the packet?
Rick, do you want this?
Pardon me?
You want this?
No, we have. Yeah.
Okay, because this shows where the building is, where the laydown area is.
I understand
Okay.
it isn't labeled accurately, that's why. I don't see it as a newly constructed building. There's a proposed area for trailers and storage in an existing steel building that's 60 by 40 feet approximately.
That's,
Pardon me?
that's the new building.
That's the new building?
Just as,
It's labeled on here as the existing steel building.
yeah,
Yeah, okay, what is it? That's what it is. We have the new ones going right in here.
It's the 40 by 60.
See that parking?
So they
It is.
put out an engineering map.
It says existing, it's not, it's proposed.
yeah, it's our,
That's already there.
this site plan was
Building's
made
already in
after.
place.
It's been built, it's built.
The building is
Something they
built.
started earlier.
That's what I just was a little confused at our last hearing.
This is the building we're talking about?
Circumstances were on the lot. And I thought that maybe members of the public would be a little bit confused, so if you see there. Just south of the proposed trailer storage area, there's a rectangle. That's the.
That's it. That's
The steel building that's been built, with that this is the target enterprise location, correct? Okay. So that's south of the driveway area, closer to the road, and then. The yard area is going to be north of the driveway area for the most part. And then there's trailer storage, proposed trailer storage behind where the, north of where the newly constructed steel building is.
Okay.
Savannah, anything that exists already, with the exception of the laydown area, has been approved under previous permits, so we're not, that's not even part of this application.
Correct.
This application is quite specifically just for the laydown area, right?
Correct.
Okay, just wanna make that clear.
Okay,
That's good.
okay. Yes,
John? There was
Yes,
as part of our packet, there's something from, the state NFIP coordinator, Land and Water Resources Division, was addressed to you.
Yeah,
And it says something about this area is in a floodplain in the Hop River.
the parcels are, yes.
Yeah. But I think we've determined that it's outside of the wetlands.
It is both outside the wetlands and outside the floodplain.
That's not what this letter says.
So
Right.
the floodplain. John, do you mind if I speak to this for a second? So the floodplain is mapped as being on the gravel driveway, like on either. Basically south of that's south, right, towards the Hop River, is that north?
North.
North towards the Hop River. So there is some floodplain where they're proposing building that area. There is no floodplain for the other application.
No, for this one, there's a floodplain.
There is some
Should
of
that,
the proposed land area.
does that mean it has to go to the wetlands?
It's not, floodplain isn't considered wetlands.
No, it's defined by vegetation, not by presence. of
Soils.
wetlands. Yeah,
Wetlands is that's.
okay.
that floodplain definitions are under your floodplain.
Yes, and I should note that those floodplains are from like 1985 and they're currently being remodified and relooked at. They're very old and outdated.
Okay.
And the only thing, there are really no structures being proposed. The floodplain regulations really only come into effect for planning and zoning. And the land and the building office is when you're proposing habitable square footage, habitable structures. in the floodplain. And, you know, things need to be, you know, mechanicals need to be elevated above flood stage and any habitable area. But, and you can't reduce flood storage, but just putting pipes down on gravel in the floodplain is not something that is really covered under our flood regulations.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Can't build, can't excavate, but you can lay down.
Right. Let's go to especially types, all of them.
Any questions from the commission on this? I want to open it up to the public. So with that, I would welcome any comment or question from the public, please. If you could raise your hand and just announce your name and address for the record, please. Go ahead.
Tracy Henry, 3 Pine Ridge Road.
Thank you.
Just in regard to what we were talking about. Deep says, I got an email back. And she said FEMA considers stockpiling materials to be development in a floodplain. This type of activity is considered development and should be evaluated during the permit process. And it says, you know, they're in a mapped regulatory floodway as it can create obstructions to flow during a large event, you know, causing damage. So they do consider it development, even stockpiling material, if it's in a floodplain.
Is that communication we have a copy of?
No, I actually just got this from Diane Quebec.
Okay.
So she did, you know, she did say that. And, you know, and what I don't understand is, so Deep has expressed, you know, their opinion, concern, whatever. And she did send, multiple maps to John. And it does, you know, also say in the email that John got, that it's in the process, FEMA's in the process of remapping. And this area is part of the Shetucket River Watershed Project. The town of Coventry has also expressed their concerns about it being in a flood zone. And, you know, unsecured materials in a flood zone can become mobile during a flood event. So I don't understand. It doesn't seem that there's a concern for any of that, as far as I'm hearing. Savannah said in an email on July 14th that it is within the natural diversity database. But it's not state funded, so they're not required to do anything unless the public asks. So, I mean, is this something that we should be asking and we should be concerned about? Because it seems that, you know, multiple other people, towns, Deep, are expressing their concerns. But the town of Columbia doesn't seem to have any. So, just throwing it out there. Also, I guess this question is to Jeff, and I'm addressing you, Rich. But I'm asking Jeff, who did the leveling out of the lower portion and put the millings down?
That was going to be a question I wanted to address. Has there been excavation of that floodplain area at any point in time? And what does the current grade level represent in terms of with the millings now versus excavation or modification, if any? So I would ask
I was asking Jeff, who did it?
I don't believe,
I know. Like he was asking me.
is he?
There's all about other. He's muted, right? Who's there?
Oh, there he is. So a question to the owner, the area, the laydown area as it exists now. What's the state of that area versus prior to all of the excavation work that was done on the site? And the regrading, has that area been regraded in any way? Has it been level? The millings that brought in, did it change the grade appreciably from where it was before the work started?
I think Rob Hellstrom's, in the applicant's submittal
Just for the record,
indicates that
for the
for the
record.
record, yes. Yeah, it's
I
there.
ask you to just state your name for the record, name and address.
Are you asking me?
So we have it for our record, please.
Are you asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you.
I'm sorry, yeah,
asking you
I'm
just
sorry, I can't,
before you
there's a lag
testify,
time.
I ask you to state your name and address
Yep.
for the record.
Jeff James.
Thank you. So could you verbalize that, or do you want us to just go to work on the maps and try and figure it out ourselves?
Oh, I think the applicant's, it shows that there were millings added to that area, approximately 3 inches. I think that's, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe that's what it shows.
John Sosky, I do. Like I said, we had Wallstrom. Yeah. So, yeah, just, hold on 1 second.
So I was asking the owner if that area is regraded as part of his regrading of 0 Route 6.
No,
So trying to
no,
get a
it was,
variance.
it was not. It was not. There was millings,
so the only
only
thing that
millings were
you-
added there.
So millings were added to finish the,
It was just 3 inch depth of millings according to Halsted and.
just, let me. Yeah, if you just hold off till you recognize, we'll get there. Okay, so no regrading according to the owner, and the applicant has said to us that there was 3 inches of millings brought in.
Correct.
Okay.
I can't tell if you're speaking to me. I'm sorry.
I was just establishing for the record what I felt the testimony was, because I wanted to be very clear about it, just so we get it on record. So the activity in the floodplain, for at least part of the laydown yard is, the addition of 3 inches of millings from where it was pre-graded work. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes.
Okay, that's just wanted to be very clear. Yes,
Who did the millings? Was it Jeff or was it John? That was my question. Who did the millings?
I don't know that that's pertinent, who did the actual work.
Why isn't it?
I'm just telling you from a legal standpoint, I don't believe that that's pertinent in the most respectful way I can. You may want an answer to that, but who actually did the work at this point is not necessarily
But
part
a
of our
permit-
review.
But we're here because a special permit wasn't done prior, it was done after. Just like the special permit for the excavation and the grading wasn't done before, it was done after, and I know we're not talking about that.
We're
that-
only addressing this
Right,
application.
but I'm just asking, we're not entitled to know who put the millings down?
I think the more appropriate question might be, when was it?
Well, we know when it was put down.
We do.
We watched it, yeah. As soon as they cleared the trees, they took all the trees out of there. Then they had brought piles and piles and piles of millings that were sitting there. And then when the trees were gone, the millings were spread. And that was long before a special permit was taken out.
There was.
So,
When you said a
know,
special permit taken out, explain what you mean by that.
well,
You mean
isn't
an
there a?
application made for a special
Right,
permit?
right,
Okay.
application made for the special.
There's a big difference. A special permit taken out means it was applied for and approved and is in place. And we're just really careful with the terminology. I don't want anything to go on the record not accurately representing the status of
Yes,
things.
okay, so yes, it was before anything was approached with the town.
So my question would be, is a permit needed to put down 3 inch over things?
Probably a building permit, because when you go to pave a driveway, you need a building permit.
And this is 359 cubic yards of material. So it's pretty substantial.
You know, whether,
So well, I'm sort of looking to our zoning enforcement officer, which would.
I know you are.
Thank you, Sabrina.
I'm going to our floodplain regulations just so I can.
Okay.
Order.
Yeah.
John,
If you want, I can put the flood regulations on the screen.
okay, thank you.
And not to step on
No,
Savannah's,
go ahead,
not to step on her authority here, but our flood hazard regulations cover a few things. If you're, I don't know if you can see this, I'll make it a little bit bigger. This is section 53, so 53.2 in the flood, the section is called flood hazard district regulations. There's a couple of things that are regulated: residential construction, which is not this; non-residential construction, which is also not this, because that refers to new construction and substantial improvement of non-residential structures shall be constructed, etc. But this is not structural. Elevated buildings, which again, this is not elevated buildings. Base flood elevations in A zones, I'm not sure this is in an A zone, but where base flood elevation is determined, there's no new construction, substantial improvement, or other development, including fill, is permitted, which will increase base flood elevations more than 1 foot at any point along the watercourse, etc. So if we're talking about 3 inches of fill, this regulation does not apply either, because no fill is being proposed over 1 foot. And then there are encroachments prohibited, and without permitting, and so we're in the permitting phase right now. And then if you look at the I'm sorry, I skipped right past it. General standards, section 53.3, it talks about anchoring. All new construction and substantial improvements will be anchored. Again, this is not construction. Construction materials and methods, again, refers to construction and substantial improvements, be resistant to flood damage. Again, referring to the construction, which this is not. And then utilities and alteration of water courses, again, those elements do not apply. So it is really just, you know, the laying down of pipe, which could be considered the encroachment here without appropriate permitting, which is again what we're discussing. And I think it's probably not surprising that the state's flood manager would say, hey, think about floods. That's kind of important. That's fine. But it is not the state regulation, it is the town's zoning regulation concerning floodplain, which are relevant to this case.
Okay. Thank you. And John, the question that came up about the communication from the town of Coventry with regard to the floodplain.
Yep.
We discussed that at the last meeting. I thought that we
did.
identified some of it inaccurately identified floodplain areas.
I didn't go into the substance that much. I mean, frankly, we were required to refer it to the town of Coventry. They submitted testimony and we received it. I don't think that they were making any demands on the town. They submitted their testimony like anyone else.
Okay.
But you're not bound by their recommendations.
I understand. I wanted to put the substance of their recommendations. If they were accurate, I'd be more inclined to look more closely if we found that they didn't quite apply.
I think my sense is that they overestimated the impact on the wetlands and floodplain. But that, that's, again, it's up to the commission to judge the value of any particular piece of testimony.
Can I ask a question? What about the state's input?
So the state's input was sort of guidance. And again, Diane Ivkovic had emailed me because she had received a complaint concerning this project. She didn't send me a copy of the complaint, but instead just sent me broad guidance about floodplain standards, which is, good information and valuable. But again, that's not, she wasn't citing state regulation. She was citing guidelines and the regulations that most relevant here are the town zone zoning regulations which guide it. Because the state requests that each municipality establish floodplain regulations for itself, for each municipality.
Is what the state's suggesting or the guidelines they're suggesting in conflict with our regulations? Are they coinciding?
I don't think they're broadly in conflict. I would want to read Diane's guidance again. It was mostly sort of take a look at this mapping, and I think, you know, she I think probably interprets the physical pipes, the material that being stored, a little bit more clearly than our regulations might define them as regulated by flood guidelines. But yeah, it wouldn't be clear to me that state, she wasn't citing something that would override local regulation, I will say.
I have a question to the applicant. So the entire, to the right turn way down area, is that all chain link fenced in?
No,
No. So is there any, I don't want to get into really problematic areas, but,
we were told that we needed delineation, which was $3,500, which through this line here.
No,
Yeah.
wetland.
No, so wetlands wanted a barrier, so no, this is the wrong drawing. So basically, well, this is what we started with.
let me go back to the question I was asking. So you have all your materials stored here. What's the
It's upside
prevention?
down, material will be sort of like this.
You're not being stored in here where the buildings are?
Well, so I mean, eventually, I'm gonna try to think this is right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and so is there a fence around this area? For security?
So from here to here, there's a boulder. Boulders approved by.
What's
there?
Boulders so that they don't put the material in the wetlands. That's the red dots? Yeah,
That's
that's
correct.
approved by the wetland.
Okay.
Not from migrating into the other.
So what's to keep the public from driving in where there is?
Oh, there's a gate here, and there's an active over here, this is all tree.
Okay.
And then again,
The reason for my question, I'm not trying to trip you up, I'm just trying to find out. What's to keep, if there was a massive flood event, what's it to keep a lot of the lightweight stuff from floating away?
well, first of all, there is no lightweight stuff outside. It's all 24 lengths of pipe, it'd be concrete structure, that's pretty much all we keep outside.
Okay.
Or
Plastic
15-foot lengths of
materials.
plastic pipe, and it's all in skid quantities.
Okay.
There's nothing loose or,
Okay, that's what I was asking, thank you. Okay, let me go back to the people for attending. Any other questions people have or concerns? Yes,
Tracy, 3 Pine Ridge Road. Back on April 15th, Savannah sent an email to John. And it said to continue work on site, you'll need to apply for a special permit. And it says contractors and construction yard with equipment materials with explanation of how materials will be screened from the street and abutting properties. And she references 31.2.8. And it does say that the materials shall be screened from the street, Roses Bridge Road, and abutting properties, us. And then it goes on to refer to the screening and buffer section, and then on to section 66, which essentially says the maximum combined area of outdoor storage is limited to 20% of the developed portion of the lot. Now, this lot is not developed, so 20% of nothing is nothing.
31.2.8.
Do you want to speak to that, Savannah?
Yeah, the second part of that, this is 66.3A is what she's referencing for outdoor storage. The second part of that is unless the site plan detailing the specific location and type of all outdoor storage has been approved by the commission, so there's this caveat for commission approval for outdoor storage, that's from the regulation. These were internal emails between John and myself, the NPDB email was also internal, and it was a question I posed to John, just to clarify that.
But the buffer, the reference about the buffer doesn't
Just-
say.
Just let Savannah finish, please.
The buffer. Yeah, I probably did, as a standard. If this is gonna be in view of the public, because it's not a residential district, which of course I just laid down there is. There should be a buffer for. Whatever is yeah, if it's in view, but that's specific to, and my meeting that I know was specific to what they were doing. This is a separate special permit. The other one we're reviewing. That's.
Right. Yes, sir.
I'm John Patton, 4 Pine Ridge Road, Columbia, Connecticut. Regulations on asphalt millings in Columbia, Connecticut are governed primarily by the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, DEEP. With local enforcement handled by the town's land use offices. A key statewide directive from DEEP specifies that asphalt millings are not considered clean fill, which places restrictions on their use. Made from oil byproducts, right?
It's not something I think any of us are familiar with.
Well, it's not being used as clean fill, it's being used as a service. As a wearing service. Yeah, it's being used as a wearing. Yeah, which is what it's intended for. It isn't being used as clean fill.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Andrea Lee and I'm a resident of Two River Valley in Columbia. I'm here today as a directly affected neighbor of the Osmo LLC property. The one where 6 acres of woodland were stripped and now 40,000 cubic yards of fill are being proposed, with no meaningful buffer for those of us living next door. In trying to understand what our rights are, I submitted a Freedom of Information request to the town of Columbia. What I received back was troubling, not just because the files were unreadable and disorganized, and not just because key documents were missing, but because the town included without explanation a full packet of legislative documents related to House Bill 5002, the Public Act on Homelessness. That inclusion felt out of place.
Can I ask you to just speak to the topic of this public hearing
It
here?
is, it is.
You were referring to the prior public hearing that we've closed.
It's the public hearing as a whole.
Okay.
So that inclusion felt out of place and honestly deeply inappropriate. It had nothing to do with the request I made. And given the context of dispute between homeowners and a commercial developer where we're asking for a reasonable vegetative buffer, I took it as a warning, a message that if I keep pursuing this, I should be worried about becoming homeless myself. I want that to be heard clearly and publicly, whether it was a mistake or not. That material should have never been included and I should have never been put in a position where I'm left wondering whether my town is threatening me for exercising my rights under Connecticut law. We deserve transparency, we deserve professionalism, and we deserve to be taken seriously when our homes and our property values are impacted by industrial level clearing and grading next door. If the town planner and commission don't believe they have the authority to require Oswa LLC to plant vegetative buffer on their own property, then they need to show us in writing why not. Don't push the burden onto the homeowners. Don't offer 3 trees as a consolation prize. Don't stall and delay while a clear-cut hillside turns into a staging ground for commercial use with no screening at all. We are not unreasonable. We are not standing in the way of economic development. We're asking for one thing: protect the residential neighborhood that existed here long before Oswa LLC bought that herself. And I'd like to enter into the public record the email correspondence between the town of Coventry and Columbia's town planner, in which Coventry raised multiple valid concerns about lack of proper notice under state law, 6 acres of unpermitted disturbance with no erosion controls, plans missing critical environmental data, and a rush process that leaves no time for neighboring towns to respond. In response, Columbia's town planner dismissed those concerns by saying they don't have to comment at all, and stating the town would send information, quote, when we get it. This is not just dismissive, it's reckless. When a neighboring planning and zoning commission formally raises red flags, the response should be cooperation, not sarcasm. Thank you.
I'd like to unpeel some of that. I think any concerns you bring up, I think it's important that we address.
Want me to speak to the Freedom of Information Act or?
Yes, if you could.
From my knowledge, so, we received the Freedom of Information Act request not that long ago, probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I can't remember exactly, I'm sorry if I'm wrong. We received it and we were under no real obligation to get the materials quickly, but under her request, we did compile the materials and said, you know, we have a lot of moving parts, so it could be that some things are missing, but hopefully not. This is what we have so far. And so we thought we could compile everything. We did put it into a file folder on a zip drive. I think what happened was the Outlook files were encrypted and we did not know that that was a security measure that Novus had. So unfortunately, when Andrea took it home, she realized that she couldn't access the files. She called and came back and spoke with Mark and Jen. And then they printed everything off for her. So my guess is there's something there on the printer about homeless something or other, and Jen probably grabbed it in the printed materials and accidentally handed it over.
Okay, so there was unrelated information that likely was
Yeah,
passed along.
kind of in the scramble to get her the information in a timely
You
manner.
feel that all the requested documents were delivered?
I can speak to my end and I do feel I included everything.
Okay. Yes, please.
There was multiple duplicate documents in that zip, in the printed out copies that I had received from the town administrator's assistant. The public act is a 91-page document about an act concerning housing and the needs of homeless persons. And it couldn't have been on the printer because when I did have the zip file, there was multiple things that I could access, such as the minutes, the agendas, and this House Bill Public Act was also accessible on that zip drive. Those were the only things that I was able to open myself. So I don't think that it was a accident that it just happened to be in the printer. But I could be mistaken that it was added on. I'm not sure who added it into the, because I was told they had a shared file that everybody just sent their information to. But there was a lot, I mean, I have every single thing that they gave me here with their correspondence. There's a lot of things that it's clearly missing in the files. And it's multiple of the same exact duplicate papers.
So what is it that you were looking for that you did not receive?
So I was looking for any correspondence with Oswa LLC, with Target Enterprises, with any of it dating back to a year ago from today. And with the Freedom of Information, if you need it within a timely fashion, the town should be making that.
So are you saying that you feel that there was some correspondence that occurred that was not delivered to you or not?
Yes, there's multiple emails where there would be a response, there was complaints made, Savannah on April. Let me hold on 1 second. April 9th and 10th, Savannah sent an email saying that she's gonna send a violation letter for all the earthwork that was done without a permit. Then there was April 10th, there was also she said that she was struggling to hear back from the owners, Jeff James and Francis James, and said if she didn't hear back, she would send a letter to cease and desist the work. There was zero correspondence back and forth as to what the response would have been during that time.
I had a phone call. The phone records aren't part of the FOIA. And I received a phone call from the property owner.
Did you receive that phone call prior to writing your violation letter or cease and desist order?
As I said, I was gonna write that order if I didn't hear back, and I heard that. And then he was completely compliant.
And you didn't notify any of the other town officials that you had received that?
The phone call, yeah, of course he did. I was in the office when it happened.
So you went around to the.
I mean, we talked in the office, we talked on the phone. I mean, that's just stuff that we don't have on paper.
So I'm asking very specifically, if you have something you feel that wasn't the, I work with all the people in the office and they're only focused on doing things the right way. And if you think that something was deliberately omitted, I would really hope that you would have some way to document it, because in my experience with our professional staff, their only incentive is to do things correctly and treat the public with respect and adhere to every regulation. That's what we try and do. If you feel that that's not the case, I would really respectfully ask you to be more specific, not throw out generalities.
Okay,
You know,
well, there
I'm
was
not
a,
trying to be defensive, you know,
No, that's
I want to hear what you have to say.
I understand.
You know, and I want you to have every opportunity to say it. You know, if you have a concern, it's better to put it on the record.
Yes,
But-
no, I have an email from Savannah that states that there was text messages and stuff that she had received, or that's not an email, I'm sorry, that was when she was over at my house in person. She had said that she had received text message and in none of these files, there's 0 text messages, and that was specifically requested in my FOI request.
There was a text message file, and I'm sorry if it didn't get printed, but it was just between me and John, and I can definitely print that for you.
Yes, David.
At the risk of oversimplifying this, what I think is really going on, if I'm listening to the audience, is we're back to talking about a buffer. I don't think they're specifically concerned about this application. I think they want the bigger picture taken care of. And if you look at this map, this whole area is not disturbed and is not going to be disturbed. Why can't we go back and just say, let's put up, and before we were talking about large, not arborvitae's, what was the?
Yes.
Yeah,
Arborvitae direct.
if you look at and we've all driven by there, there's already a berm there that gives some height. You wouldn't have to put big bushes there to start with to block the view. So it would be less onerous on the applicant financially to put the plants in, to do the screen. They wouldn't have to be 6 or 8 feet or 10 feet to start with. They probably only need to be 4 to 6 feet, and you wouldn't be able to see anything that's over there if they put them on top of the berm. Maybe that's oversimplifying.
The berm is within the scope of the regrading.
No, it's not. If you look at this,
It is, actually, the berm is built,
well, maybe
it's inside the fence line.
right, but this says existing to be, this has not been changed.
This part is not an issue.
Yeah,
So.
that's what I'm saying, from, was it Pine Ridge Road down? It's not being changed. So why not just do the plantings on that ridge, and that solves 90% of the problems.
The room's there.
So their vegetation. Consider your own, they agree that you feel it's a.
Setback.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everyone can hear what you're saying. Yeah, if you could just ensure.
Bob's referring directly to the regrading lines, the proposed grade lines.
Yes,
And I think there's an assumption made that the grading lines are the limits of any work that's being done. But there's planting. And there's reestablishing of vegetation in those areas.
but right along,
There's no real work limit line, let's say.
right, but if you look at the proposed grade, we're not gonna touch anything I'm not talking about any of the area that's proposed to be changed. I'm just talking about the ridge line along Rose's Bridge Road. If we did a line of smaller plants, but if you're down on that road, the berm already gives you some height. And it wouldn't take a lot to block the view.
Agreed, south of Pine Ridge Road,
Right,
towards Route 6, is, the berm is definitely being modified.
yeah, that I'm not worried about, because that's really the church and all that, but I'm talking about,
The north of that,
that's right.
it looks like they're peeling off from part of the inside. Not the street side, but the property side of the berm, they're peeling off and doing the grading.
Yeah, but if you take,
You're right, the berm is essentially stayed.
yeah, the part of the berm next to the road is gonna remain.
Right. And that berm is,
And I think that's the real issue with the neighbors, is that part of the road. And that would block the view all the way across that property, including Jerry's Marine.
If that height stays where it is, he's right. Yeah,
it's very difficult to see over.
It is quite high.
But don't forget the houses rise up here too.
Yeah, and there's traffic, so it goes.
I mean,
Well, that's why I say it'd be fix 90% of the problem, it's not gonna. In the beginning, once they start growing. Then we'll take care of the problem.
I don't have a drawing in front of me, what's the elevation,
It just, could you wait till you're at nine, please? And we did have a number of.
What?
Yes,
Mama Marcus at Primary Road.
thank you.
I don't know the exact definition of a farm, but that was dirt that was on that lot that he pushed off. Is now unsightly because it's full of weeds. There's plop a 6-foot tree out there. We're still gonna clearly see the marina, Route 6. And what stops that from eroding? There's
Well,
nothing.
obviously it all has to be planted, but I'm just saying to get the block, the view. If you put something on the top of the berm, that's gonna, I was there.
It's like a little pointed mountain.
Yeah, so you put it right on top of that, you wouldn't be able to see over it.
And what happens with the weeds and the
Well,
erosion and
I
all
mean,
of that?
no, that has to be taken care of, I mean, the weeds are gonna fill in.
Yeah, I believe the applicant had a question or a comment.
Yeah, John Sosky, I was just asking, does anybody know the difference in elevation from Route 6 down to?
I'll probably ask you that.
Under where you.
I tried to find it on with my telephone on the map, I thought
Just a subjective comment. I'll be very candid with you. We've seen much better presented maps from engineers than this. This is just so bare bones as to almost be impossible to discern the reality of the site. And there are times when we have people that, especially when there's a very sensitive topic like this, where they come in marked up in color, so it's easy for everyone to understand what happened.
we use the local guy, you know.
Well, I understand.
It's 38 degrees.
What is it, Bob?
It's almost 50 feet. No, it's more than 50 feet.
Yes, I had somebody else that had a comment. Yes, sir.
Neighbor here, 6 Pine Ridge Road, Columbia. You know, all my neighbors and us, you know, this is our 4th meeting coming here. All we're asking for is a buffer, plantings. Let's get Target in there, whatever else he's gonna market a property at. We don't care. We just want a buffer in for the sightliness, unsightliness, and the sound buffer. And we haven't heard anything other than total of 12 trees being proposed on 700 yards of road. That's all we're asking for. Make a proposal, have them make a proposal to put in trees along all of Roses Bridge Road, with the exception of where the gate is, that Target's gonna access off of Roses Bridge Road. And the day's done for us. That's it. That's all we've been asking for since the day one meeting.
I think we've heard that request.
And the cheapest thing has been 12 trees on 3 properties, leaving number 2 out of it, which is why the owners stormed out of here the last meeting.
They're right there.
I mean,
Could I just have one person?
we just want
Please.
the buffer. That is it. End of story.
I think we understand what you've asked.
I mean, it's upsetting to keep coming and just rehashing never mind the stuff that was done prior to any legal permits being pulled, like the milling.
Can I speak to your being upset?
I
We have a legal process in place. We're also spending time on this.
understand that.
And we do it out of service to the town, out of respect for everybody's rights. And I think could I just respectfully ask you to respect the process and just instead of expressing anger, just make the point that you want, the factual point. Now, if you don't like coming to the meetings, you don't have to, and you don't have to have your voice heard, but just sort of legal process, having meetings, multiple meetings, looking into things in a lot of depth. We want to hear what you have to say, but to say that you're angry, you have every right to say that, but that doesn't get us to a solution, and that's all I'm asking. Just keep
And I
in mind.
appreciate that, and like I said, I mean, I'm just, like I said, this could have been all resolved come the first meeting, but there's been nothing from the owner of the property.
Well, you feel it could have been resolved. Here we are at the second meeting for this application, and this is the application in front of us. We also have the other application where the public hearing has been closed, but we can't cross-reference multiple applications in different states of with different legal statuses. So we do it, we deal them away as 2 different issues and approach them as 2 different issues. And there's certain things we can do on one that we may not be able to do on the other, but we spend whatever time we need to look at a good solution for all parties involved. Am I speaking for everybody? Yeah, we take that very seriously. Yes, Camilla?
Tracy, 3 Pine Ridge Road, just kind of a question out of curiosity. Why on all of the site plans? Why were none of them included the flood zone? None of them. Why is that?
Good question. It's a concern of mine also. You know, that it wasn't delineated and what any limitations on action could be in the floodplain is one of the things I referenced to the applicants when I said, we've seen better site plans come before us. I mean, best description, I can say it's sloppy work. You know, whatever you paid for it, I would have hoped for more from the engineering company. We've seen much more comprehensive work. So I'm just telling you, is it going to affect?
We were told to use the local guy, which we did, you know?
Well, we didn't say that, you know.
No, I didn't say you said that.
You know, whatever it is, it's minimalist at best. And it was confusing to me, which is why I took and highlighted the GIS map, just so we could have a reasonable perspective about what the site looked like from a zoomed out overview. You know, that there isn't a perspective on the adjoining residential lots that could be affected by this, because our regulations do specifically state that when work is being done on a commercial property adjacent to a residential zone, appropriate screening and buffering is mandated. And that's one of our obligations to protect adjacent residential zones. You know, I think. So here we are. So were there any questions or comments from the public? Yes.
Adam Smaller, 100 Ridge. I would just like to say that I have to agree with these people that the town members don't seem to be concerned about these citizens who have been here for 50, 75 years. I don't know how long they've been here. But I would think that the town people would work a little bit more with them to help them resolve what their issues are.
Well,
Why do you think that we don't care?
Well, I'm listening to what the meeting is going on and a lot of you are confused about this, confused about that. This guy doesn't give the right, map that you want, ask him for a new one. You know, it just doesn't seem like you're following through on things.
I can assure you that we all care quite a bit. We all care quite a bit, and we're sorting through information that's being presented to us by a lot of different people. Some of it's good information, some of it's not good information, and we have to figure that out. We have to be responsible for a decision here. I promise you, we all care, very much so.
Well, it's not getting across to these people.
Okay, I apologize for that.
Okay.
well, not expressing complete agreement with everything that they've said, as they say, is part of the process of keeping your mind open to all aspects of an issue. So the idea that we haven't, it's our responsibility in the public hearing process to not make decisions about an application until after the public hearing is closed. That's just a legal requirement that we have. So it was a legal process. It would be like a judge in a trial expressing disdain for one side or the other. And I've probably gone on the edge of that with expressing what I thought about the engineering work, but that's a factual observation. I've seen a much better presentation from other engineering companies on other applications. This is, I wish they had more information for us. We'll have to make a decision based on that. I respect your perspective on it, but we can't come to a perspective or a conclusion until we hear everything said. Because what if in the last 5 minutes of the public hearing, when it's open, something compelling is presented? For us to have expressed that we have a certain stance on something earlier than that, it's not what the process is supposed to be. We have to keep our mind open and listen to everything. And we're at a point where if we have a closed public hearing, then we can't take in new information. So we're asking lots of questions right now on everybody's perspective on it. We want to hear it. But to assume anything about what our views are on this, and I hope we haven't indicated that we don't care, because I care a lot. I know each and every one of us care a lot about this issue. And we care about the neighbors, we care about the neighborhood, we also care about the applicant, you know, it's just, we have a process that we follow, and we try to be very kind and very respectful in it, and hear what everyone has to say. And that, you know, and keep the process moving, but thank you. Yes.
And really to River Valley Road, just a quick question, were they fined for any of the work that was done without a permit?
I don't believe that they were, I believe that they respond, Savannah?
Yeah, that's not a part of our standard violation procedures, so no, they weren't fined yet, they responded upon my contact to them. As you exhibited in your emails, the email stopped because they called. And then we moved forward with the application, which is what I would ask if anyone who made a violation. No. I don't do fines until there's been 2 letters sent, an enforcement order, and then I initiate fines.
And as far as like the millings that were put down, there no fine issued for that work.
They were target work with me right away, so no, there's no fines issued. That's not been standard procedure in town.
But I thought it was James that, or yeah, Jeff James that had put down the mill.
Target's the applicant. So that's who came forward for the special permit for the millings, so that's who is responsible in my mind because they're the applicant.
We don't quickly go to fines in the town for enforcement, we're just trying to get results.
Yeah, but they're,
Yeah, I mean, we're very candid with you, and I would never hide this, our ability to collect fines is right around 0.
well, I know, but you think that like, okay, you have them take the millings out. Or result, if they don't take them out, then that would result in a fine or failure to remove them.
And you know, the approach, just to illuminate, going well prior to Savannah's tenure was, and I think it deserves an explanation, and I don't mean to be long-winded about it, is if it's something that have any reasonable possibility of approving, why have them remove it? Have them go through the application process and get it addressed. That they didn't follow the process initially in the appropriate way. Let's figure out what the probable end would be and see if we can get there with the least amount of punitive approach. And we do that with everybody. If it happened on your lot and you did something, we just try and work with you to resolve it. We don't want to have an adversarial approach from our town government. It's how do we get a result in a kind way, in a respectful way, especially, and if somebody did it even deliberately, we kind of pretend like it's inadvertent until it's obvious that it wasn't. I mean, I don't mean to overspeak the perspective, and that's kind of the directive we have for the building staff is we want to be a customer service center, not a police enforcement action office. You know, and that's something that's very important to us, that people feel that building department is responsive to getting results and solving problems.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when you were interviewed for the position, it was really well laid out. We're looking for somebody to help solve the problems. Because we've had limited success with finding. We did get the Board of Selectmen to enable a fining regulation many years ago. We've had some very flagrant issues so that we would have some sort of teeth to try and enforce some enforcement action. And it's challenging. You know, we had a case where we spent $55,000 in the town to assess $22,000 in fines that the judge reduced to $5,000 eventually. So the town takes seriously the fines, and you know, but we found the best approach is just a persistent enforcement communication. And I don't mean to go overboard with it, but I have a lot of concern for your concerns. I can't say that strongly.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll be quiet for a while.
A question to the applicant, on the plan, it says proposed area for trailers / storage.
Yeah, that's the original plan from Jeff James when it was Jack's, or John's Bradford Battle Yard. There were trailers there, so Halsted put that on there,
Paul, who's Paul?
Halsted, or whatever his name is.
Hellstrom.
Yeah,
Surveyor.
So that is part of the application.
yeah, I mean, we would like, in that area, we'd like to put material down, yeah.
Okay, because what that does lead us into the screening or buffer. Because if you look at the trailer section, I think there's,
Well, that was existing, that's why you put it down there, that.
it says proposed on the plan. Proposed area for trailers.
Cause we're not.
We'd like to put trailers there.
Yeah, we're not.
There were trailers there, we'd
There were
like to.
trailers there
put
originally,
trailers there.
When John's scrap metal was there, they had a row of trailers there. And that was on the original John's site plan, whatever. That was the approved site plan.
It's also not on the lot that's adjacent to the residential district, right?
So it's all. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Let's transition, if you don't mind, into the, whether a buffer is required or not. Or what do
That's something, let's bring it up in the public hearing so you can get some input on that.
That's what I was by my calculations, the distance from Route 6 along the property line down to the gate is about 650 linear feet. Plus or minus. And then it's about 425 linear feet from Pine Ridge Road down to the gate. So, but I think there's houses south of Pine Ridge Road there. The one house is affected, right? Number
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Was affected, but the berm is a little higher there, so. Just to throw that out, so that we're all talking about the same kind of distance and things like that, so.
So 400, how many feet?
About 425, what you were talking about, the Pine Ridge Road down to the gate, about 425, and then the whole total thing is about 650.
My input would be, we don't really wanna do the 650 because now you're gonna get involved in sight lines and view of.
Well, if you go halfway up, so at least. House number one, which was gonna be proposed to have
Yeah,
a couple of trees anyways,
right.
is not affected, so maybe it's halfway up, so then it's. 500, well, it's not 525 feet, something like that. Because the owner. Send yourself intertwined. A previous proposal was to divide our variety at certain properties, one of which was number one. Which is south of the road. I would include that, so maybe it's like 500 some odd feet, that's that. We're gonna have a tree, who's gonna put trees, there's 6 and 3 there. So this is 4.5. This is 650, so somewhere in between, you know what I mean?
And that's where the brown is the lowest.
Yeah, I know. I'm not a arborist, so I don't know, how far away the plantings should be from each other to create an effective buffer. Some of the buffers that I've seen are actually 2 rows of arborvitae. And they're staggered so that, you know, if we've got a tree or a tree here and it grows, there's a gap. So they'll stagger them so that you have them. So then you can effectively have a buffer, I mean, a visual buffer.
You had some numbers last week, well.
There's actually a regulation has a standard. That. In section, that's what I was just gonna look up. Screening and buffer.
Right here.
Of such height with combining character, so it's pulling a little barrier. It is 65-7 -2.
Oh,
So let me tell you, can I just throw a perspective out to the commission, and I want to do it now, not after we close the public hearing. I have the perspective that the fact that there's activity on 0 Route 6, the 10-acre lot. it triggers fairly wide discretion on our part to require screening of the activity on zero Route 6. But unfortunately, it limits our ability to just buffering what's going on that lot by the current applicant. Now, the idea that
We also have discretion according
yes,
to our regs.
we do. So that being said,
With knowledge of the site and the conditions and the items that we're screening.
you know, and there's been some discussion about the balance of that site and 213 Route 6, and I don't think we can address 213 Route 6 here, but we can address things that we would ask to be on 0 Route 6 because of the activity that's proposed there.
Yes.
And I would hope the applicants go back to the owner and put the onus on the owner for those modifications, because some of the changes that occurred on 0 Route 6 have impacted the ability to have a natural screen for what you propose to do there. Picking those words really carefully. And I would love to see some sort of buffer that goes from about midway on 1 Pine Ridge Drive, but across the street on 0 Route 6, a buffer that goes down to the gate area. Does that make logical sense? And I don't know that we need to require arborvitae specifically. If there's a more cost-effective approach to a visual buffer, great. If it was white pines, it may grow faster, but an offset planting, I'm open to that. I think getting specific is probably necessary, so we know it's there and know what we want to potentially consider as a condition of approval, and to be as specific as possible. But I think having some flexibility, we've had prices on the, I don't think we should get into the weeds about the price of the buffer. Just the idea that there really needs to be a buffer on there to buffer impact on commercial activities on a commercial lot that's adjacent to a residential zone. We really need to address it.
Wasn't there some talk about a bond for the amount of money that would be needed?
That was a different application.
It was in a different application, a different issue, yeah. That, in that application, it had to do with other aspects that we're not talking about now.
But you talking about putting the trees on the first part, right?
Because there's commercial activity on
Milling
this
John's
lot.
property.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's proposed commercial activity on this lot, now that puts the lot into play. Not for the grading part of it, but for the commercial activity.
Gotcha.
One of the impediments to doing a staggered routine like you're talking about is if we put the plantings right on the top of the ridge, that would be tough to do.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to get into the specifics of it because I don't have the expertise. It's Bob.
Right.
Here we have an architect who's saying I'm not a arborist or a landscape architect. So what we have here is we'd like to get a solution that addresses the buffering that I would like to see buffering. No, this is
I'd like to see a solid buffer.
I'm sorry.
I just said I would like to let us be assured that there will be a solid buffer from end to end. This neighborhood deserves it. And it's according to 65.7 of the regulations.
I'm gonna open this back up to public comments. Everyone. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Andrea Lee, 2 River Valley Road. I just wanted to see if I could have it set on record from the gate down to the river that the applicant will not be disturbing any of the trees or any of the stuff that's currently there.
Thank you. Okay.
There's nothing shown on the application that has any disturbance.
No, but I'm saying for their future development that area.
They can cut trees down if they want. There's nothing that precludes them from cutting trees down in our regulations, just as they've done in the existing one. Unfortunately, there's nothing that precludes me from doing it.
But shouldn't a buffer be retained from my property as well?
We would have to have them propose a conservation easement on that part of the property that would permanently enjoin them from any clearing on that area.
Prior to clearing, okay.
Yeah, so that's about the limit of it. John, is that if we propose that area to have a conservation easement on it, limiting the activity and the ability to remove trees, we've really tried to use that judiciously in the past, because what if there's dead trees? What if there's a bunch of poplars there? They need to come down.
I mean, the current plans right now call for that to remain, all that vegetation to remain.
Okay.
So they have addressed it.
Yes, and somebody else.
Tracy, 3 Pine Ridge Road, agreeing with the lady on the screen, white pines are not gonna create an opaque buffer like an a double hedgerow arborvitae would. And that's what specifically says in here, an opaque buffer. And just one more thing, and I feel bad for the Target guys, but Hellstrom put right on their survey that this area, this site is not in a flood zone, so that was a blatant lie.
Anything else from? So where we are is, I would like to come up, I think it's unfortunately, it would be nice if it was proposed. Putting the onus on the applicant, because you are the applicant, to come up with some sort of approach for a buffer. And if you need another couple of weeks to do it, I know you want us to act quickly, but it's a project that's been going on for a year. And here we are in the final stages of an application for the expansion of it. We're addressing.
Can you clarify? Where are you looking for this buffer?
We're looking
Along
for
Rose Bridge Road.
Pardon me?
Along Rose's Bridge Road.
yes, going, in my, what I expressed is going up to halfway,
So from the gate, which, so
From 1 Pine Ridge Road to the gate.
the gate,
Go a little bit further than that, you're saying. Oh, yeah, from one.
One, yeah,
you know, from 1 Pine Ridge Road,
to the gate.
yeah, so across the street from 1 Pine Ridge Road.
It could be a buffer, it could be,
And
a buffer doesn't necessarily have to be a landscape buffer. It could be a fence, opaque fence.
It could be one of those fences with the plastic in between the.
No, that's not opaque.
no, he's talking about a chain link fence with the inserts.
Yeah, it's still, that's not opaque. You
Yeah,
can see through.
that's something that a buffer would be.
But I'm just saying,
I actually noticed a lot of opportunities to screen since this has all started, and I've looked at them specifically for that stuff. And I've looked at fences with green panels in them, I've seen vegetative ones, it's in a combination of fences and vegetation.
I think either you as the applicant or your, the person leasing property from should look to the professional to come up with a solution. Okay, review section 65.7, which talks about screening and buffering. Have that professional look at it and then present a plan. I mean,
If there was any existing natural buffer there, then we might not be having this conversation, but now that there's a commercial activity proposed on the lot, and there is.
with all due respect, we're at the lower end of the line. We have no activity all the way up Rosenbridge Road.
no, but coming
And
down,
we don't own.
coming down Rose's Road, we can see your activity,
Oh, that's true.
right?
What they should have done is left up a buffer.
Well, it's just on there, so.
Yeah.
First, to segue, interesting, about that, should not be a buffer there.
Please, no comments unless I recognize you, Tracy.
Tracy, 3 Pine Ridge Road, and you know, in all fairness to Target,
I'm sorry, sir, somebody's told. Just one at a time, please.
Jeff James is gonna be renting to, we don't know how many other companies on that upper part of the thing. I don't think the onus should be on Target to do that when the owner of the property is going to have multiple other businesses there. So why should Target have to foot the bill for that?
You know,
Okay.
that's outside of our purview. You know, it is, it really is, and it's not up to us to tell them how to operate a business. But the idea that our regulation does enable us to mandate a buffer, and I think it clearly does because of the proposed activity. I'm gonna avoid going into the relationship between the tenant and the landlord and for actions that the landlord has done and leave that between them. But we really are looking for a buffer. I don't see an easy way to close out this public hearing tonight and vote on that.
There's another possibility. And that is that the folks from Target either abandon their plan to work on parcel 0 as part of their application. Am I correct?
Yes,
We could hear the application, but they would need to do that willingly and knowingly. I mean, you have room to do business without the parcel 0.
I believe you do, but not speaking out of turn, I have a partner before I shoot myself.
I understand, but you understand what we're trying to do.
Right, no, I understand.
Yeah, you'd have to put new buildings in.
You know, there's no legislative mandate that we closely pay attention to the financial impact on an applicant, but we do. And we're very sympathetic and very.
Well, they have time limits based on their existing lease and their new lease.
We talked about this at the last meeting.
Yeah,
You started talking about it with your partner.
that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, no, like I said, we're overextended beyond, you know, and from what I understand, the current place we're in is sold, and they want us out. And like I said, we do anything that's reasonable, you know.
So we've been paying in both places since January, and that's for our pocket.
But what about this? What about? I don't know if we can do this or not. What if we approve the plan just on property 223 with no activity on 0? And then you can come back at a later time after this buffer situation is straightened out.
That's what we talked about last week. And that's where I was going.
And then you could expand your laydown area.
Or James could make it part of his application. And.
But we would.
Any help is appreciated, honestly, that would work.
It could be to the extent that if you have activity on 223. You have no legal ability to require buffering.
You clarify this one, this is the line we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yes. That would mean that you'd have to abandon.
We abandon this.
Your plan to do anything on this.
We'll have to do over there.
It would have to be where you're proposing it here, because you'd be getting into.
You're not adjacent to a residential
Situation. You'll be limited to the area that we can approve tonight, which is.
The best solution for all parties would be to agree to the buffer because you've been supported by your landlord to do what you need to get across the finish line.
That's an option too.
Yeah,
That would be the.
this is all honestly. Abandoning this is restricted for us, you know, we're trying to move into.
They just threw it out there.
Yeah, no.
It's brought up last meeting.
The only thing I'll say is, which area they're saying we have to abandon? The large about.
Is that over here?
So it's.
No, we got
Everything will be over
Have
there.
to be over here.
Can I just clarify? If you abandoned it, then it would no longer be on the table for consideration because for the buffer. But you know, in the best possible world, you get the lay down yard and you're obviously paying rent to a landlord who has income from use of that land. And then the landlord could buffer the adjacent residential property appropriately. That's all we're asking for is an
The only
appropriate.
caveat I'll say is with respect to our neighbors. That area, the large area, we plan on doing a tractor trailer loop for our deliveries. So that the trucks wouldn't be tying up outside the gate, causing all kinds of, because there is traffic there. Our intent was to have them come
Your
in.
name is?
My name is Kyle, the manager of Target Enterprise in Columbia.
Okay.
Where we are now,
First and last name.
Kyle Wood, Target Enterprises. Where we are now, the reason we're leaving is because we've grown and tractor trailer access over there is non-existent. It's a bottleneck, it's dangerous. I almost got hit yesterday holding traffic for a truck, so we're looking for a bigger yard so that we can safely bring in cargo and not jam up Moses Bridge Road. So that was the whole intent, so the big area was so that we could have a loop, have the trucks come in easily and not tie up traffic and get the noise as far away from them as soon as possible and get it up to our yard so we can unload trucks up there. If we cut that off, it still might be feasible to
We're
do
not
that.
proposing you cut it off. We're saying if you did, then we wouldn't have a discussion about zero
Right.
Route 6.
No, understood. The whole reason that we were going for the bigger yard was so that we could safely get trucks in.
There's a path to the end here, but there's issues to address. That's where.
I just didn't want to get to an end point and then we got tractor trailers backing in because there's no room to turn them around. And then everybody's gonna be all over us again.
Oh, thank you. No, we have questions.
I didn't
For
really.
the record.
Millie Ramsey, Hunt Road, Columbia. I came for the later part, but I'm just sitting here wondering, is there ever an option where the owner that needs to put the buffer in actually offers to put the buffer on residents' property if they were
That was
to.
proposed and mostly rejected by the residents.
Well, within reason. I mean, 2 trees to buffer a yard doesn't work, but,
Well, let's just say what was proposed wasn't acceptable.
okay, so then we could ask for another proposal perhaps?
Well, you know, we're juggling a couple things here. We're trying to get a timely answer for an applicant.
Mhm.
We're trying to protect the neighbors. Trying to absolutely stick to our regulations.
Yeah.
How many more things do we got?
So is it time for us to, we have the owner on the meeting, it's time for him to ask us, for us to ask him if he's willing to do this buffer.
It's,
No.
I don't know that,
I don't think
they're not the applicant, but if the applicant could get the owner to address the concerns that we have. Either the applicant agreed to that buffer or the owner or someone.
Jeff, could you address this?
Sure. What is the additional request from that lady that just spoke?
Well, she's not the one.
From my understanding and misunderstanding, if you were to put the buffer along Roses Bridge Road, we wouldn't have a screening problem with the laydown area.
We could probably, and I don't wanna overstate where we are as a commission, probably close the public hearing and address all this evening. If we had a very specific buffer that we felt addressed the needs of the.
I don't think any of us is qualified to specify what the buffer is though.
Let me not agree with you on that.
Okay, no, fine.
What friends can do,
Yeah.
disagree.
I'm not sure what's being asked of me, I guess is the question.
Let's take it again.
Yeah, well, an adequate buffer along Roses Bridge Road from lot 1 Pine Ridge Lane. Extending down to the gate area, and also a restriction, agreement that there'll be no clearing for a reasonable buffer area. From the gate going north to the property boundary. And adequate buffer might be a 10-foot or 15-foot wide strip of land that you agree not to clear down there. Without prior permission from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the buffer would probably be something like 6-foot arborvitaes planted at 3-foot intervals, or 4-foot intervals with offsetting 4-foot intervals to fill in between, on top of the berm, on either side of the top of the berm, so that they're offset. And I don't think we need one every 2 feet. That size arborvitae will quickly fill in if they're planted on 4-foot centers. I've had something similar on my former house lot, and they provided a really effective buffer by giving them time. We're gonna have a time when there's limited buffering, but it would quickly grow in. And if anybody on our staff could weigh in on that, that would be great. I agree that we don't have the expertise, but we have our professional staff, we have somebody who is probably done extensive land excavation and landscaping. I think we could potentially come up with a solution if everybody's willing. Short of that, then we could go another couple weeks and get some input from a consultant that the town could reach out to. We'd ask the applicant to pay for whatever the cost of that advice would be.
Yeah, that's a whole lot of gray right there. It doesn't say anything about my application relative to approval. And so I'm not comfortable with answering that at this point in time. I'm willing to do something, but again, that's just way too open-ended, guys.
I don't because that was very open-ended.
No, I thought it was very specific. It works out to be 131 trees.
Yeah.
And that's very specific. And I think, now could we step out on a limb and say, could we go back and do his application first? Finish that and then come back to this one?
Because we're in a public hearing right now.
Yeah,
So you have to close the public hearing.
or leave it open.
Or continue the public hearing. And I don't know if we could legally reopen it after we consider it. I'd love to get a solution that everybody's. I did have some other comments from the public.
Andrea Lee, to River Valley Road, just a quick question as far as like the target trucks, are you guys gonna be using the entrance on Rose's Bridge, or is there gonna be a new driveway constructed from Route 6 going in near right around Jerry's
I believe the
Marine?
proposal does not include a driveway. That's not going to be the truck access for the delivery trucks coming in and out.
So even if they had abandoned the lot on 0, the 30 trucks that they potentially could have per day going in and out, that doesn't constitute use?
I can let them answer it, but I can also answer to the best of what my knowledge is. They feel that this is just an extension of the former uses, the John Scrapyard use of that road. So it's already being used for commercial access, if I'm not mistaken. John, is that the stance that the applicants have taken?
I'm sorry, are you asking me, John, or John Osowski?
Yeah, no, you, John, not our town planner.
Oh.
Yeah, it's use of an existing driveway on commercial property.
Prior to though, it was not big tractor trailer trucks, it was just mostly residential people coming in with their scrap metal and leaving with it. It wasn't big truck.
I don't know what the scope of that use was, but you bring up a valid point.
And it wasn't 30 trucks.
It was far more extensive than that, though. Tractor trailers carrying major loads of scrap iron in and out, container loads of scrap iron.
Very, very rarely.
At least daily. So if we don't have the same perspective on it, okay, but you're on the record. Any other thoughts from the public? So so the applicant, the owner of the property is unwilling to address the issue at this point, from what I understand.
He didn't say he was unwilling. He said he wanted to hear something that was more definitive, and it doesn't sound to me like that what you were proposing is definitive.
I think what you're looking for is, and I don't even know if this is possible, if you do this, then we'll approve your application. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Well, why would I have to do it twice?
No, you're not have to do it twice. I'm saying, that's why I said maybe we should reverse the orders here and finish his proposal first, and we can put the screening in with his proposal, with his application, and then go back to.
Or you can't put it in with his application because that public hearing is closed. We don't have a legal right.
Or alternatively, if I were to do something right up against the target, where their millings go across to the 0, what is the footage? What is the length? I don't have any of the maps in front of me. If I were to do something in terms of a buffer along the frontage there, or along their lease piece, would that be?
We're not asking you to examine that at this point. What we're asking you to examine is a buffer all along Roses Bridge Road up to covering where the one Pine Ridge Lane ends. So as Dave counted, we're asking for 131 6-foot arborvitaes along Roses Bridge Road to provide what we feel is an adequate buffer, and that's without us going out to a professional and extending this another couple of weeks. If that's something that can be agreed to, and some sort of reasonable limitation on a buffer strip on the area from where the gate area is going north on Roses Bridge Road, I think we could likely address a lot of concerns with that.
Right now, the application says that the area north of the gate is not to be disturbed.
Okay.
So I don't know if we put that in, so.
Okay, good point.
Could you guys call up on a map where you're proposing, John? Could you show the distance where One Pine Ridge Road is? Could you show the distance where you're looking to propose planting the berm? Is that possible? Because I'm not there.
You want me to bring up a map, Mr. Chairman?
How we did. So John wants John to pull it up on the, pull the site plan up on the screen, John.
Yeah, wait, do you want the engineering site plan or like a GIS map?
The
old
uh, I would try the engineering plan first so I could see where the berm is relative to One Pine Ridge Road, but you know, I'm not 100% certain that'll satisfy my need for visuals.
All right. I'm not positive that's in this packet. Mary Kay, is that, would the former application be in this packet too? Hang on.
It's in this week's package.
Yeah, all right, yeah, here we go, hang on.
It's right on the, private ones to make on yes.
I can't tell. Can you put your cursor where One Pine is?
Yeah, it's not really shown here. I think this is a road right here, so One Pine is probably right up over here. And then the gate is down here. My best estimate, I did it on Google Maps, is about 450 feet.
How much, John?
I'm sorry? I believe like around here to the gate, the Pine Ridge to the driveway is about 450 feet.
Right, but we wanted to include number 1 Pine Ridge, which is south of Pine Ridge Road.
So go a little farther south from there.
Around 500 feet.
Right.
So
So let me.
it's about 525 feet, I think.
If you go to the
I'm gonna do a Google aerial, just so we can see that. So we're looking at the same thing.
So that's 4. Here.
All right. Can you see the Google? Can you guys see the Google map?
Yes.
All right. So I'm gonna draw a line from the driveway along. I get about 488 on this. So yeah, call it 500 round numbers.
Yeah, and as we measured it here, it's about 525 feet.
Between 525, 500 and 525.
Going to the front of the house.
Number 1.
Yes.
Including the frontage of the house. So.
One Tracy Henry, 3 Pine Ridge Road. One Pine Ridge. The back of their property ends at the driveway for the Baptist church.
And that's where it would start.
Right,
That's where the
there's a
buffer would start.
telephone pole right across, I don't know the telephone old number though, but there's a telephone pole right there. So from that point to the gate
Yes.
is what you're proposing, yes.
That's what I was suggesting.
Because they're talking about the corner of Pine Ridge.
No,
Road.
you've got to include the side yard for number 1.
Right.
It's another 75 feet.
At least, Jim.
Yeah.
That's the definition. Property.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have a.
It's a deeper property than it was wide.
So at some point, I believe that this was defined by someone, and I made a note on this cursory map that I came up with, that it was about 650 feet from the front of one Pine Ridge Road.
650.
Oh, here, 150, okay, thank you.
Down about.
So to the applicant, what we're asking for is somehow come up with an agreement that there be about 525 linear feet of buffer on the opposite on Roses Bridge Road. Yeah,
That scale bar.
is everybody, are we in agreement? We're looking for about a 525 foot long buffer. Are we in agreement that we're looking for a 525 foot long or providing buffer along Roses Bridge Road?
We'll take it all the way to the end, bring it up to the end,
And it's.
with the back is more.
The problem is we don't know exactly where the adjacent property is.
Okay, we don't have something like this to go.
Yeah.
Look, it's, there's no scale on there. I purposely eliminated it, because I knew I was gonna shrink.
It's just scale and they don't have.
We're not in agreement with this.
Yeah.
And the look at the those what property is.
Bear with us. We're figuring,
There's a problem right there.
we're trying to get you across the finish line.
Can you look,
Or give you information that would allow us to get across the finish
can you go
line.
online and see what the property, side yard property distance is from number one?
So I have
You know,
somebody,
that-
go to the back of the room, man.
You said. No, I want the property, the frontage distance.
Yeah.
Side yard of the property, along Rosenberg.
You had a question, somebody?
Tracy Henry had a question.
I just was commenting that, you know, they were talking about the front of the Squire property as opposed to the rear, and the rear goes to,
Not sure what the Squire property is.
oh, one Pine Ridge.
One pine.
But Bob said that his thoughts were going to the back of the property where the church parking lot is and where the telephone pole, and again, I don't know the number of the pole.
So what is it, is it a?
I was just putting in information about, because they were on the screen, were proposing something different than what I felt that was being proposed up there.
When you say they, you're referring to.
When they had the map on the screen as opposed to what Bob and Walt were thinking about.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be very accurate with
Okay,
who we
yeah.
identify as having said what.
Okay.
Very, very accurate. So, yes, ma'am.
Mona Mercury 6 Pine Ridge Road, we come up with 175, so I'm right. If they're gonna be all to, you know, one row, then.
Right, the 4 foot interval, so.
Yeah, that's at 3 what, that's at 3 feet
Yeah,
intervals.
so you're doing 4 foot a year.
It's the 8.
131.
I think at this point in time, guys, we're not going to get anywhere tonight. I'm going to have to consult elsewhere myself. And before we have this conversation, I just don't see it. I'd like to discuss it with my tenant. If you want to approve him short some of the lay down area for me to incorporate that later on, I think I'd be okay with that. And I'll work it out with John and Kyle and elsewhere. And I just feel like I'm going to need a consultant on this myself here at this point. And it just seems like the demands are being made by the homeowners. And I just don't know what that really is going to involve.
By the homeowners, we're proposing, we're proposing a buffer, actually, since measured it,
About 600.
it's about a 600 linear foot buffer on Rose Bridge.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just think you're asking a lot, and I'm not willing to answer that without consulting with others. And
So the
I think-
homeowners are not in a position to demand anything. This is a proposed resolution that we think would be acceptable to the commission if we go to vote. And we don't propose it in an open public hearing. In an effort to try and get a quick resolution of this for the applicant. Trying to be creative where we can.
I'd like to speak with the applicant outside of this public hearing. And maybe I can just work out some other square footage for them elsewhere on the lot so that it's not on zero. And it wouldn't require them to do any type of buffering whatsoever. I just need to consult with the others, guys. We're not gonna get there tonight with this conversation.
So that's where we are. Buffer would probably get this done tonight.
I would suggest to John that you go for your approval on the piece that you absolutely need on outside of zero. And I'll work on it otherwise through legal means, et cetera, John. And I'll get you where you need to get to. I'll get you your lay down area where you need it.
Yeah, that would, I would think would preclude us taking any action on this tonight. We need to see a revised site plan. We don't want to on the fly. Yeah, we give a highly conditional approval. We just don't, we don't let them do things out. You know. Let's
So they draft,
What-
all of that area. Just on 8.5 by 11 and
I would want to see a finalized site plan.
It's about another $3,500 each time we go for a site visit.
It's not gonna cost them that much to take, go raise that area.
Sorry if I may, question for John. Town planner John. If it's not on the parcel of having a residential district, does it need a special permit?
No, it needs, I think maximally a site plan review, but maybe not even that, depending on the specifics. Because again, you know, the site plan stuff is usually based on square footage of structures. So I don't have a quick answer for that. We'd have to look at the permitted uses in the section 30 something, the CM district for uses.
It's a listed use in that section. The contractor's yard is a listed use in there.
Contractors, construction, office and yards, all stored equipment shall be screened from street and abutting properties. It's site plan approval, but there is screening required. So not substantially different, particularly now that you've already had the public hearing and have heard public input. It's probably not substantially different. Although, and Mr. Chairman, if I might just take a moment. And again, I'm fully aware that I'm not going to endear myself to the neighbors or possibly some of the commissioners, but I would just want to reiterate that the screening should be done not only in consideration of the neighbors' concerns, but also in the future use of this commercial site, which is, you know, not being used, but instead being prepared. And we do not know what the commercial use, the final commercial use will be. So we do not know what the appropriate screening will be. You're going to, you know, what's being discussed this evening is planting a few hundred or more plants that might be torn out in the next 18 months. We do not know. And so,
But John, you don't know when that property is gonna be developed. It'll be sitting there for 10 years.
right, sure, but it is not being used, and the use is the thing that should trigger the
I
screening.
ask for a conversation in the audience, please. No. I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
No, I mean, the difference is, yeah, it could be vacant for a long time, but it is also, if it's vacant, then it is not being used, and the use is the thing that triggers the need for a buffer.
And that goes back to what I asked earlier about just putting a buffer for targets, lay down use area that's on zero. Why can't I do that?
We have an application in front of us. Let's address the application as it's presented. If it needs to be revised, so we can consider a modified application based on the public input, then so be it. But we probably have a path forward tonight if we can agree to a buffer that we all indicated we think is advisable on the property. And there's commercial activity proposed on it. There's also the question of whether the traffic that's on the driveway is an intensification to the point of needing complete approval. Even if they withdrew the laydown area on 0 Route 6. The idea that there's now going to be a retail operation, in essence, you can call it wholesale, but it's open to the public operation going down Roses Bridge Road with much higher traffic count than probably a scrapyard had previously. It's an intensification of the use and additional buildings that added there. From my perspective, that would also have necessitated a special permit application for the use over the driveway on 0 Route 6 from Roses Bridge Road. So this a lot of different layers here. And the bottom line is, I think a buffer would resolve everything. The idea that there's a proposal in another application, I can't even reference that. All I can do is address what's in front of us right now. And here we are, I think this clearly needs some buffering. And the other question I have is the traffic. We haven't gotten in, we've asked some questions about the number of trips and things like that based on customer visits, and we taken the applicant at their word to this point, and there's no reason not to. But I do have concerns, and concerns I'd rather see addressed through this public hearing process than not being addressed. So maybe the thing to do is to continue this for 2 weeks and go from there and see if a better solution presents itself. What do you think? This commission, we'll give you more time, just.
I don't think he's left us any choice with what you just said.
I don't want to cut this off, but if there's a proposal to significantly modify this application, then I'd like to see it documented. I'd like to see it, the idea that.
Lessening an application would require that?
We would want to see a modified site plan that represents the actual application, to come up with highly conditioned approvals based on a verbal description of a change for a substantial change in the application. I would want to see it documented. How does everyone else feel? I agree. That's good.
There's gotta be a paper trail.
I've already done it before. Yeah, and to no good end. Yeah, I like that as something wrong, speak to the fire. Yes, we did have a question from the audience.
Well, just a comment, Tracy, 3 Pine Ridge Road. Jeff was saying, why can't I just buffer the lay down area where Target is going to be? Well, you will be able to see, 12, 24, whatever inch pipes, concrete things, all the way down Roses Bridge Road when you're coming down from Route 6. So that would require a buffer from that telephone pole all the way down. Plus, they can't put a buffer up there if they're planning on bringing tractor trailer trucks in and going, what are they gonna bob and weave around a buffer that they put right in front of the laydown area? So it was just a comment that, he said doing that, but it doesn't make any sense. Cause it would require
I think the
buffering.
thing that we were hoping for has been well established.
Okay, but just, he had commented on that, so.
Understood. If this is over, given the scope of the project, asking for the buffer area, I think is warranted. Any other thoughts from the commission? Can I make a motion that we continue this public hearing to our next regular meeting, which is Tuesday, October 14th at 7 PM here.
Rick, quick question.
Yes.
Are we able to make a stipulation that at the next meeting, the parties come back with an actual plan for a buffer? Because it's already coming into the end of September here, and we're going to be getting too late to start planting anything. So if we're going to keep delaying this, can the property owner come back with a plan?
Yes,
For a buffer?
correct. That's very specific on what we're asked for. We actually asked for it last public hearing, last meeting. There was, we only hinted at it, but I think we've been very explicit as to what we're asking for.
Did I not bring one back at the last meeting? For my public hearing? Not this public hearing, but my
I can't
public.
speak to your public, I can't speak to the other public hearing during this public hearing.
Oh, well, we have been right along.
And we were very careful not to reference the other application. That's what we've done. So, Fred, I'm sorry, your question, I want to make sure we address it.
I think specific about what we're looking for.
Yes. When it was referenced then for buffering for this specific matter, the property owner says he has to go back and consult. So I would like him to come back with a plan at the next meeting. I don't want to keep extending this any further. Otherwise, it's going to be too late to put in anything this season.
Good point, and I appreciate that, thank you. Yeah, yeah, so what we've expressed is we'd like to see a buffer that starts across the street from the southern end of 1 Roses Bridge Road and extends on Roses Bridge Road on 0 Route 6, all the way down to the start of the gate. And I would like a notation on the plan that some reasonable buffer area will not be disturbed going forward for the area that goes north of the gate to the property boundary as it along Roses Bridge Road. That's what I'm looking for. Does that kind of describe what we as a commission are hoping for?
Yes.
We can see a very concise plan. Then I think we can get this one forward.
So I second the motion.
Okay, continue. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Staying.
Well, abstaining. Fred's in favor of that, so we're 6-1 in favor. Thank you very much.
I'm not opposed to abstaining.
Yes, it's a 0. Yeah. Okay. Next up. We have under unfinished business, the special permit application of OSWA LLC for excavation grading for section 63 of the Columbia zoning regulations at 0 Route 6, map 6, lot 25, a CM1 zone. The lot area is 10 acres. It was originally received June 9th, 2025. The public hearing was closed on September 9th, 2025. And this is under our unfinished business. No public comment can be accepted at this point. John, perspective, Savannah, perspective on this application. Love to hear from both of you and then weigh in for commission discussions.
I'd let Jonathan do it first if we can.
So I mean, I think my recommendation, my recommended or draft motion of last month, I think I still largely stand by. I believe that the much more effective buffering would be offered to the property owners of the properties that are most visually affected by the clearing and activity, largely for the reasons that I stated earlier, that you know, this is not particularly of the 0 Route 6 is a site preparation in progress. It is not an end use, and because we do not know what the end use is, what its implications are, what its buffering requirements will be, what its driveway access in and out will be, what its height will be, We don't know any of that, and so I think, you know, installing permanent buffering along this property line is, I think frankly, it is not a good expenditure of time or money. I understand that that places me at odds with maybe members of the commission and members of the public, but this is a transitional site. You know, it's possible that the commission or the neighbors believe that the number of plantings that I recommended is insufficient. That could be. I stand by it, but am willing to, you know, obviously I defer to the commission's wisdom on this. But I think it's more effective to offer the plantings on the property of the people that are most affected by this, instead of as a transitional measure on a site that is not anywhere close to being done. I'll leave it at that. And I revisited the property last week because there was some question of if I had identified in my memo the appropriate houses, and I do think so. I think the house to the south on Pine Ridge, I think it's 1 rather than 3, is much more potentially visually affected by the property than the property to the north of that, which is, or it was probably 2, Pine Ridge. So I stand by my memo. You know, I think plantings are more appropriately planted to closer to the affected houses and not on the boundary of the property in question. But I'll let you proceed from there.
Is there anything, let me know if you can't disclose this to us because we're out of the public hearing. Did you get any feedback from the residents at 1 Pine Ridge, 7 Roses Bridge, or 2 River Valley Road?
No one has contacted me. No one has contacted me directly, other than FOI questions.
Okay.
And I just like to, never mind.
Well, why the folks? I know. Or that, which one is one?
So recurring question.
Yes.
After hearing John's concern about this might be temporary plantings anyway, what if we required the applicant on 0, post a bond that would cover all of this planting, but not do the planting yet, but be guaranteed that the planting would get done and when at the appropriate time?
Any thoughts on that?
Who determines the appropriate time?
When it's developed.
Well,
Well, but we see an application when that happens.
right, and so any development there, unless it's extremely small and involves almost no structures at all, will have to come back for a special permit from this commission. Because it's in the commercial zone and it's immediately adjacent to a residential zone. Virtually all of those activities for end uses will be required to have a special permit. So, you know, unless you know, Mr. James is literally going to walk away and leave the parcel vacant, he will have to come back, or his end use tenant will have to come back for a special permit.
It's the problem I have is, and I've stated this before, is the lot could be vacant for 10 years. That doesn't help the residents across the street.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, the erosion and sedimentation bond is likely to be substantial. You know, the idea of these arborvitae plantings is a minuscule cost compared to the ENS.
And the actual performance bond.
The performance bond, it's to be very small. I mean, at least as part of this application, whether they do go on the property here or on Rose, on the 0 Route 6 side of Rose Bridge Road, it's a drop in the bucket. You know, because we don't have, for the application as it exists, for not for a use, but just for the regrading, we have a very limited ability to mandate a buffer. That this was offered, by the applicant as a possible solution. It's about all we can get. We don't want to put it that way. You know, the idea that any expansion of the use of the driveway could trigger a need to address this at a higher level as an application on this parcel. Well, that's not part of this discussion, unfortunately. And so we can't go there, at least in my mind, we can't. But the idea that we want the soil stabilized there in a very timely way, so as to not impact the area with dust storms swirling up on a regular basis, that's something we can do something about. So. Yeah, I don't see a lot of options for us, but to likely approve this with the conditions, and if these arborvitae's are not accepted by the residents across the street, then get them placed at the discretion of our town planner on Roses Bridge Road. And then if anything else happens in the future, that's where we'll deal with it then.
But we have had legal determination we can require a buffer.
No, not for the regrading operation, because it's not developing the site.
But the application for 3 properties. Because it's 3 properties that was commercial use on. That's what I think what the attorney said.
Yeah.
We are aware of that. I'm sorry, if that's the case, I wasn't aware of that. Was
the same for both properties. Is there a determination?
It was a very open-ended response from the attorney.
Got for free.
Yeah. So he didn't explicitly say either way. Very much.
Okay, I 2 weeks ago, I specifically asked the attorney weigh in on that specific question.
What I specifically asked him.
Okay,
And
can you ask him again, or do you want me to ask him?
I emailed, I called, I believe John also reached out.
No, they didn't answer.
John, did you have any other, was this with Rich?
And Ken.
And Ken Slater, Rich Roberts, Ken Slater?
Yeah, no, they reinforced the broad authority of the Planning and Zoning Commission to place requirements and conditions on special permits that you believe will better meet the intent of the regulations. It's fairly broad.
Then it would be within our purview to approve this subject to an adequate buffer along Roses Bridge Road from the approximate southern end of 1 Pine Ridge Lane across the street, all the way down to the gate area. As part of the approval of this application. How does everyone on the commission feel about that?
I'm good with that.
I think our regulation gives us the ability to do that. Whether or not we want to is another thing, but we have the ability to do it in our regs. So if that's the answer, 65-7.
So what if,
standards.
so what if we approve this application and all work stops? What's our ability to get that buffer?
No, that's the performance bonds for.
That's assuming he posts the performance bond.
That should be a requirement.
It's part of the
Should be done
application.
within X amount of days of the application being approved. Isn't
Savannah,
that the normal course of events for a performance
Are you
bond?
saying if there's no more site work, if it stands as is,
if it stands as is,
I'd have to look at what sort of enforcement action we need to, if anything. As it stands now, the soils are stabilized, there's not an erosion risk, just because of what's flown in on the seeds. So I don't have an answer for that right now, I'd have to see, if it's enforceable.
would we do well not to vote on this evening? so that we can defer to a better perspective. I don't know that we need a better perspective legally based on the advice that we've gotten from our town council.
Well, there's the erosion and sedimentation control bond. There's also a performance bond. We can,
Well, the
do both,
performance bond can encompass both.
but it can also encompass the buffer and this, that, whatever.
Yeah, it can encompass all,
Right.
all the above.
The erosion and sedimentation control bond is specific to that.
No, it can include
I
that.
can't include that?
Yeah.
You sure?
And it can be divided according to what Savannah and John come up with.
Even value wise.
And,
Right.
I think the question, I don't think there was any lack of desire on the commission's part, and I don't wanna assume that we voted. So I don't wanna overstate that, and it can pull me back if I'm going the wrong direction, that we wanted to see a buffer on Rose's Bridge Road. The question was whether we were legally entitled to ask for it. And a more clear perspective now that we are entitled to ask for it as a condition of approval. I think it would be prudent for us to examine what the downside of this is if the applicant just walks away from this. Given the near $1 million fill project he's proposed there, what the cost of a buffer is small potatoes in the grand scheme of that fill project and the stabilization of the land project. So just don't see it as usually.
You see it getting approved otherwise? I don't. I mean, it's just, we are thinking of freaking wall here.
Yeah, I just. So,
I think any further enforcement for what was already, like what occurred, which was already a violation, right, without a permit. He came forward for the permit, at which point it was no longer a violation. The permit was denied. And he left it. I don't know, I mean, obviously the town's best recourse is legal action if they feel it's enforceable, but that would have to get approved by the board of selectmen. It's a cost to the town.
Do we have the ability to approve something that he hasn't asked for?
that he doesn't want.
Well, he hasn't agreed to do this buffer.
We can impose the conditions.
Yeah.
And then,
Then he can choose whether to do it or not. If he wants to move forward.
yeah, he has to do it.
This is nothing.
Yeah, that's what I mean, if he wants to move forward.
I'm just not sure it'd be any longer enforceable since he has come forward for a special permit. I
don't agree with that.
Even the previous work,
So previous work, yeah,
done
so
without a permit.
he was done without a permit, I asked him to forward for a permit.
Right.
We could always look for some restoration of the site to its original, as close as possible to the original state. Because the work was done without a permit and it needed a permit.
Okay, I do wanna look into it more, but I honestly don't know. I don't know where.
I suggest we defer action for 2 more weeks on this application. And can I suggest that we put this application on the agenda for our next meeting to act on the old business prior to acting on Target Enterprises extended public hearing, and so we'll go into old business, into Target's applications. Extended public hearing, then back into new business if we close the public hearing then.
Yeah, good idea. So this one first.
Let's do this one first,
then Target.
and we're looking for a buffer on the road there. I mean, it's really clear. It's a large scale project, and asking for a buffer is something that. And I would like to address the area north of the gate also with some sort of conservation dedication there, or at least a declaration on the deed that was more specific about the area that cannot be cleared. And I suggest a 10-foot wide buffer on the property boundary. Our town planner feels 15 feet is more necessary, or Savannah, but that's my suggestion. And that's being pretty specific. Yeah. So the onus could be on the owner again. We have a buffer there, then it might change the way we approach the other application.
So you're looking for a second?
Yes, and
Second.
any discussion of that? Any thoughts? Nancy, Chris, all those in favor? To continue this to Tuesday, October 14th. Okay.
Thank you, Felix.
Is anyone in the mood to do the plan of conservation?
It's still there.
I am.
Some people who's looking before.
Yeah, no, we're gonna get to that. Thank you for your patience.
More now.
So, John, we had some really good input from the. I'm gonna bring up item 6.3, the POCD, the cultural resources chapter, the housing discussion.
I'm,
Remember, we can only hear you.
okay.
Not?
I'm sorry, Rick, was there a question that you just had?
Yes.
Don't say they're crazy. Oh, I'm sorry. John, anything you want to weigh in on this? No
On the-
review?
On the POCD?
Yeah, POCD.
Okay, well, sure. So what we've based on last month's discussion with folks from the Parks and Rec, with the cemetery, the town historian, and others, we generated a draft chapter for community, cultural, and recreational resources. I'm happy to go through it in whatever level of detail you want. But you've all gotten a copy. We sort of broke it out into a couple of substantive areas: the town history, the community fabric, our history and cultural resources, including the cemeteries and the input from the town historian. We had a long section on Zegda Farm management and offerings. Then we also talked a bit about the library and the school system, and finally about parks and recreational resource, including the town beach and the property, the recreation park. We made a number of recommendations that I would just highlight on page 9 of the document, which I can just throw up on the screen. And again, this is a combination of a couple of chapters from the prior plan. Again, the prior plan sort of had separate cultural resources, historic resources, recreational resources. We've sort of put these into the same, established 4 broad goals, which are on the screen, which is preserve and protect historic resources and buildings, continue to invest in town's park and recreational facilities, protect and enhance community's cultural assets, including Zegda Farm, and protect and enhance the town's cemeteries. And then we added a series of 12 action items, strategies this is essentially the to-do list for this section. And you can all review them. Happy to take any comments or questions on that. And the way we structured this discussion, ideally speaking, had this meeting not gone 2 hours and 20 minutes before we got to the plan of conservation and development section, to have a discussion on housing matters, which is sort of the next substantive chapter that we were looking at doing. But I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman, and if you want to solicit any input on the draft chapter that was provided, and then we can get some info on or input on housing as well.
Yeah, one of the stakeholder, so who is to be talking tonight? Rhonda?
To address the housing section.
Okay. So have this summary, Roy?
I have a couple of questions as well. But may I ask something that John just mentioned? I didn't hear him say that a goal was to preserve the lake.
I'm sorry, preserve what?
The lake.
Preserve the lake.
In our natural resources section, which we discussed last month, we have a very extensive discussion about lake
really?
water quality and preservation.
Yeah,
Because that's the lake, right? The lake itself is considered a natural resource. So we did not discuss it in the cultural resources section. This, the involvement in the lake would be community engagement with the lake, which is essentially the town beach and that sort of thing. But the lake itself, water quality, environmental preservation was in the prior chapter.
So I can't tell you how helpful the summary like this is, understanding the submission from from Bernadette with the senior center and also from the housing, but I'd like you to, whatever extent you'd like to, just kind of talk us through what you presented. And just to make sure we get it on the record, keep in mind that this is gathering all the info, so then we can go out to the public as a whole for the public hearings. One, plan of conservation and development, we'll be doing those over several sessions, so this is just part of the process, the early part of the process. We're aiming for mid-2026 to be all done.
Can we do that now?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
you're on the spot.
Joanna Kincaid, 8 Basket Shop Road, but I'm speaking for Code, Coalition on Diversity and Equity. And our group looked at this worksheet and came up with these responses. I won't read every word because of the hour, but victories, more affordable housing types are possible in Columbia. Zoning, Planning and Zoning Commission made a lot of significant changes over the last year and a half. And we have an affordable housing plan, which has a lot of goals that have been met. And the town is open to feedback. We've been really appreciative to see how open planning and zoning and town, other town administrators are to feedback, not just from code, but from other groups. Losses, there's still some unmet affordable housing plan goals, and there's been a goal to add 30 affordable housing units incrementally between 22 and 27, and so none of that has happened yet. And living in Columbia is out of reach for a lot of folks, whether they're people, we all know this, I don't need to go through all that, but.
Can I just ask a quick question? Have you looked at whether or not any applications for small accessory dwelling units are really a part of an answer to that? Because I know of at least one, possibly two accessory dwelling units that have been proposed in part because of our regulation changes.
Oh, good.
And we hope to see that accelerating, and I'm hoping that they're affordable too. Yeah.
No, but that's a good question.
I'm gonna ask Savannah to just give us a perspective, a quick one.
Yeah.
What have you seen for accessory dwelling unit development within the town as a result of the zoning regulation changes?
Would be good, yeah, I would be interested in that as well. There's still a lack of senior housing, I know that there have been some efforts, but that hasn't been built. Some of that can be addressed through the ADUs and things like that, but that was a goal, it's been out there for a while. And I am curious, I think all of us are, how many people have taken advantage of the new zoning regs, because I'm still meeting people in town who have not heard of them, even though we tried to publicize them some, and there's an article in the News. They just aren't aware. I can't find that just a couple weeks ago.
How can you help us make them, get them to be more aware of it?
Well, we have a suggestion on the second page. Concerns for the next decade is that efforts to develop more affordable housing won't be increased. There still needs to be some, pedal to the metal, gas, whatever the foot on the pedal. And that we'd like to see our focus broaden, because a lot of, there's statements in the Plan of Conservation and Development and in some other documents that talk about wanting to make the town and housing more affordable to help current residents. And we'd like it to be able to broaden and attract people to Columbia, not
we wanna certainly support our current residents, but like to make it so that if somebody works in town, they could afford to be in town. If somebody looks at life and says, gee, I'd love to live in Columbia, that could actually be reachable for them. And we're concerned that new zoning changes will continue to be overlooked. So our goals and hopes would be that Columbia will continue to update zoning regulations. There are things that, we still don't know everything we need to know. We're still learning, but we hope that that review process will continue. Maybe there are opportunities for smaller lots or different frontage requirements, different things that would make, driveways easier or less expensive to make if you had a small development. And we looked at, creating a mixed use. I think this is an area we're not as familiar in. I think there are areas in town where maybe mixed use could happen. There's a lot of controversy over whether people really want to live above a restaurant. But there's new kinds of ideas that are coming out where you develop some business and then you have a deeper piece of property and you can put housing behind that. So it would be interesting to look at that and see what options there might be in Columbia for that. And the last is, we hope that the town will continue to be more proactive in addressing low and middle income housing needs. We thought that there's several ways that I might be able to help move that along, and one is to recruit a developer or designate a position for a sustained focus on housing. Another would be to create a committee with representatives from different interests, economic, housing, real estate, young, old, variety of folks that will be looking at housing and trying to continue to support the progress, and could also maybe help in ways to develop ways to communicate changes that happen, figure out other ways to publicize them and be ambassadors, if you will, to try to help move that. And then last, we keep hearing about things that at the state level that stymie development. And a lot of questions about DEEP and their approval process being too long and them not being open to new ideas around like septic technology that might.
So that would be health department.
Or the health department, okay. So, and our thought was, are there ways that we can work with the council on governments and work with our local legislators and other towns to find out, is there some way that we can move DEEP a little bit to be able to be more supportive of newer technologies and things that would help make more housing options possible.
I can address some of these things. First of all, when you put this list together, which is very good, I think what would really be helpful is if you have some suggestions too, not just these are goals, but suggestions how to get to the goals. And I've been involved in a lot of affordable housing in the last 20 years. Let me explain to you what I mean. I did a project in Coventry, and the land was purchased by the state, donated to the project, so we had no land fence. I don't believe that program is available anymore. We did a project in Tolland where the town took over through tax liens, took over a property, and we built 40 houses, affordable houses. And again, they had so many people apply for this, they had to do a lottery system. They sold out the first weekend. We were just building them as fast as we could build. But there's always something underlying, because you hit on some of the points. You can't make the lots too small because then you can't fit septic systems in. And that determines a lot of what goes on in soil types. And I would go out on a limb and say the best properties to be developed in town have been developed. It's the tougher ones that are still available. So you run into that kind of, high ledge, groundwater, there's all kinds of things. So it's not that we don't want to do affordable housing, it's just, how do you do it? And the real estate market has been so crazy that you look at a little house and all of a sudden it's $350,000.
Or 400
or 400 or whatever. And so that's the real problem. We may not be having this discussion 5 years from now, we might be in a real estate slump. And that $400,000 house might be 200,000. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but who knows? But that's the problem with affordable housing is, how do you make it affordable? It's not that we don't want affordable housing.
Oh, no, I'm real clear that
Yeah.
that's not,
And I went through a seminar before we started doing affordable housing about, don't you want the people who work in town to be able to afford to live in town? And and, you know, your teachers and your, you know, in this case, we don't have a paid fire department, but you know, all the professionals that work in town should be able to live in town. And that really came to light when we were building affordable housing, where they were talking about the casinos, and all the casino workers were driving an hour to go to a minimum wage job. And at some point, so why wasn't there more housing available to them? And so then there was different parties that stepped up in that regard, but, so that's the problem with affordable housing, is that there's ways to make it so it doesn't look like affordable housing, there's ways to make it so it blends into the community, but that's the problem, is how you get to it.
and you hit on something too, in terms of, it's also, besides ledge and all of that, developing something smaller.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that, from what I understand, you know, you need like 40 or 50 units, to start making it economically feasible for a management company or whatever.
Yeah.
But there are some management companies in surrounding towns that have started to float interest in saying, well, maybe we could be a management company for another affordable housing development. So if you had affordable housing development that was 15 units, which wouldn't really be
Well, I don't think the
economically
management.
possible, then, you know, you need somebody
Yeah.
in management, there might be other, so there's
Yeah.
lots of, I don't wanna say there's lots of ways out there, there are different avenues to get there, it's just, we don't know all of them,
Right.
and so what we're saying is, if there was a way to have somebody in the town that's the go-to person for the housing, or have some, you know, a committee of people who are trying to explore these things and try to support, maybe some of these things would come to light, but it's not easy. You
Yeah,
know?
in a more populated town, it's usually the housing authority.
Right.
And we don't have a housing authority that I'm aware of. And like in Tallinn, when they did it, this is probably an outdated saying, but it was the town fathers that got together and said, let's do this. And then they hired me, they hired me to build the houses and develop the land and everything. And that's how they went about it, but they just took the bull by the horns and said, this is what we're gonna do, and they built 44 houses.
I think if you start to add up the barriers and then what the opportunities are, you have to size up the barriers first, and are they surmountable? For example, a year ago, I think there were 13 lots for sale in Columbia. Now there's only one. There's scarcity of land in town, a real scarcity of land. And that's driven up the cost of those lots incrementally, not the same rate as housing. And that what's kept the value of land from going through the roof has been the fact that the cost of building has gone up. And then all of a sudden with the recent tariff changes, we're just waiting for it to whack the new housing market in the butt. Because the cost of, I've heard projections that framing lumber is gonna go up 30%. And if that happens, it will be horrific. It will be almost impossible to build a new house that's affordable. It will be, you build a new house because you can.
I spoke to an architect just the other day. I spoke to an architect the other day, and he's going really nice housing. He's quoting $500 to $600 a square foot. On nice stuff. Now, so back that down to affordable housing, you're probably still talking $250 to $300 a square foot for bare bones housing.
Actually, you can't do an 1,100 square foot ranch on a single family lot for much less than $500,000 in Columbia. $450 if you really cut some corners and no hardwood, carpeted floors and things like that. That's just what it costs by the time you put the infrastructure in.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd save $20,000 if you don't put a garage on it. Nobody wants a house without a garage.
No, and none of what we're suggesting or our goals and hopes is meant to say that we don't think people are interested and we don't know that there are barriers. It's just, we keep thinking that there could be an opportunity for something that we maybe haven't thought of yet. We being
Well,
Columbia, the group, and so wanting to just keep the focus on it so that when an opportunity comes up. Or if there is something that Deep could do that would make something more possible, or if there's somebody who wants to put in a community wellness DPH. That a developer doesn't say, well, it's gonna take 2 years to get approval, so I'm not gonna do this. Some of those things, I'm not, and I worked for the state, so I realized trying to make the state move on anything is a whole other barrier in itself. But, just trying to start to think outside of the box a little bit in some ways that maybe we can move the
keep
thing
the
forward a
pressure
little
up.
bit.
You
Yeah,
know, you were so helpful. You and Pat were so helpful when we went through the process of revising the. The regulations to allow multifamily development of residential lots. And yeah, we need involvement, and what we came up with was better because of your input. Yeah.
you all did a great job, so we appreciate it. Good work.
I think we have the most progressive multifamily regulations in the state for a non sewer and public water housing environment.
I keep getting asked from people in other towns, what is it that Columbia's doing? So, yeah, I think people are looking at.
You know, we've led the way
Yeah.
on lake health, over probably anyone else in the state through our approach to the nutrient allocation, doing it on housing. But we've got to keep tweaking the housing regulation to make whatever incremental changes we can make to make our regulations the best possible ones to help people.
And we're just concerned, even developers out there, I realize with the cost of housing and all this, there's a lot of uncertainty. And if there's not land in Columbia that's for sale, nobody's gonna be looking. But we're just concerned that developers may not even realize that some of those changes have been made. So, we're just trying to figure out how do you spread the word outside of both within Columbia, but also outside of Columbia.
You mentioned something about, you had some ideas about, letting more people know in town about zone changes and things.
Well, part of it was we thought if there was a committee that was looking at housing and trying to help support the town and become sort of the. I don't know, help explore different options. That part of what that committee could also do would be to look at other,
Yeah, new zoning changes will continue to be overlooked.
yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, for instance, a few weeks ago, I met a gentleman in town and we had a table about code. And we were trying to get people to fill out the survey for the land conservation development. We also were telling what code did and talked about our work with zoning. And the first thing out of this fellow's mouth was, we don't want duplexes in town. And I said, well, actually, we worked with zoning to get duplexes, available. And he looked at me and he said, really? And I said, yes, and this is why. And he said, oh, well, that makes sense. But he had no idea. Now, maybe that's an N of one, but it's happened many times over the past 6 months where people have asked, it's come up in conversation. So our concern is that even if we make more changes and improve things even more and make more opportunities, that people just don't know. And so, they're not gonna read zoning minutes. That's not probably what their, first, preference is gonna be. And so, we got an article in the News. There's, the ADU flyer is now on the website, but, so we just thought if there was a group of people that were sort of charged with getting this word out, maybe even putting something on Everything Columbia periodically and saying, hey, did you know there's an ADU flyer, or put the flyer up. I don't know. So, we'll keep thinking of it. I don't have all the answers, but just to be able to have a more proactive education part of the planning and zoning world.
Yeah. Well, we always are advocates of that. It's hard to get an audience to start with, until there's a crisis, and so we invite you.
One of the things that we floated in the subcommittee, regulation subcommittee, It's an ongoing subcommittee, which is where the multifamily regulations came from. Was the potential for creating the opportunity more affordably for private roads and smaller lots. But I can tell you, when I deal with my business in real estate, the first question I get in the subdivision from people coming in from out of the area is, there's no homeowners association, is there? It's like a plague that nobody wants to hear about, and private roads imply a homeowners association.
Common driveways,
Maybe driveway, yeah. So we'll explore it. We'll be looking at that, but that's an option that we're gonna look at, but there's, given the mindset.
Yeah.
Of owning our own driveway. It's tough, full on good. Yeah, it's tough.
Keep picking away at it.
Yeah,
I appreciate all the work that you're doing.
so yeah, keep the pressure up and I appreciate all the input here. I think coming up with ways to promote the multifamily regulation might be the single most effective thing going forward. If we could get a nice 10-unit condominium or apartment development on a 10-acre site or an 8-acre site, so it's optimizing the yield of the living units per acre and show that it's a very financially viable project, might open up, not floodgates, but another pathway of people being aware of development. They were looking for you to weigh in on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if we found that piece of property, it would be easy to attract a builder in.
Well, I had one, I had a client of mine who was looking to put in 22 units on a piece of property. It got sold as a single family lot for a premium price. It was beautiful land that would support it almost certainly. But single family development is still the mindset in Columbia.
And they're really, like you said, they're really lovely multifamily developments that look like nice little townhouses or a variety of things that really that would fit into the area, you know, and wouldn't make it look like we're down in the middle of the city, you know, so just the people need to know, they need to see it to envision it.
But it's not cheap to make it look good, it's what I'm.
No. That's true. Yeah. But thank you.
No work to you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I apologize. We sort of buzzed past any additional community, cultural, recreational resource input from members of the public, and we do have Jennifer Glinzak, who indicated that she wanted to make a couple of comments on the current draft chapter before moving on to housing.
Okay. Oh, Jen.
Yeah, Jennifer Glinzak, 281 Route 66. I am commenting as the chair of the Zegda Farm Management Committee. I first of all want to say thank you, and I will keep my comments brief. But I want to say thank you for all of the work on integrating Zegda into the new version of the POCD from the very small, basically tiny mention that we had last time. So it is incredible that we're in there and we have the support of the town. It's a wonderful thing. My only comment on this is that in the other strategies that have been listed, they have been very specific for other areas in the town and other programs. And number 6 is continue to fund upgrades at Zegda Farm, which although vague is wonderful, because then we can apply for a whole bunch of stuff. A little bit more like infrastructure or communities. It's just a little tweaking of the language would be great. And I can go ahead and send that on to John to basically just say like there's more here than just, you know, the community farm and the sledding hill and then some agriculture stuff down at the bigger lot. So we could be able to put in, this is a community resource, there's trails and there's, you know, funding the trails, maintenance and educational programming and things like that, and making sure that that's included so we can actually apply for those grants that also include those aspects. Just because upgrades doesn't have the connotation of the educational component with them and the community service component.
Sure. So Jen, do you have the Word version of this? If not, I can I can send it to you and you can just do a markup if there's some specific language you'd like incorporated.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have the word. But other than that, that's my only comment. And I really appreciate all of the work that's been done on it. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, you brought up something that I failed to bring up at the start of our discussion of the POCD. One of the key points here is we have to get all of this info or the planning into the POCD because it's used as a source document to justify a lot of grant applications. And so it's important we don't leave anything off the table, even if it makes the POCD a bit bigger than we might ideally want. Because as long as it's in there, it can potentially help us go for grants to fund those goals. So the last one we have is the one from Bernadette. Do we want to, Lily, is that you?
I have something too. Mine can be short and sweet.
Okay,
Do you want me to go, or do you want me to?
I gotta tell you, I didn't know everything the senior center did until I saw this document.
Yeah.
This is invaluable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it
great.
really is. And I really didn't realize what cutbacks had been in place that affected the senior center too.
You're old enough to go there.
You are.
When I started this, I had dark hair and a full head of it.
Sorry,
There.
Just 3 or 4 things that I noticed when I was going through some of the zoning regs. Under residential agriculture, section 21.2.1 specifically says 1 single family dwelling per lot.
But we changed that.
You did.
Yes.
Yep.
So if you don't have the newest version of the regs, when we created the multifamily and accessory dwelling unit regulations, the place where we can't really affect that is when there's a subdivision with a covenant on the subdivision that the developer put in place. Because our laws can't really trump a private restriction on a lot. So if you go into a cul-de-sac subdivision, like Hunter's Ridge,
There's no deed restrictions.
there's no deed restrictions there, but you go into other subdivisions like Sunrise Drive, it's a single single family house is allowed on those.
Right, but I wasn't interpreting this as that.
No,
And I was online reading regs. So
I'm
if
sorry,
you,
what reg were you talking
so
about?
if you don't have the most up-to-date regs on the town website.
There's two
We need
different
to do
versions
that.
on the town website.
What, I'm sorry,
But it should only be
what
those
regulation is she talking about?
Depending on where you go at it.
It says
We have an old version.
in place. July
There's still access to an old one on there.
Yeah, that's when I did a Google search, I came up with the wrong one. I had to go back through the town website to get the correct one.
Get rid of the old one.
I think there's even still 2 home pages,
On the website.
2 home pages, yeah. As they, depending on what day.
I'm sorry, let's get back to Millie's testimony.
Well, anyway, the one that I read, section 21.2.1, seemed to be specifically talking about farming. One of the agriculture zones, that you could only have 1 house on that agriculture zone, which certainly
Not no longer
goes
the case.
against.
That is not the case anymore.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
it. As long as that's not the case. But my next concerns or questions was about the senior housing section that's still in there. A couple of points to just think about is we say that,
Just let me clarify one thing.
Yeah.
So we kind of eliminated the reference to that as senior housing anymore.
okay,
Whatever you could do as senior housing, correct me, John, if I'm wrong, you can now do without regard to the age of the occupants.
Yeah,
Is that true?
hold on.
Yeah, we can't do that anymore.
We do have a senior housing section. The regulations are slightly different, but what we did is we created a new multifamily housing regulation that was much broader than the senior housing. So you could still do senior housing restricted age. We have those regulations, but we added and overhauled section 52-719, which is multifamily, which is the one you were referring to earlier, Mr. Chairman.
So what we came up with is if you can do it for seniors, do it for everyone else. If you want to make a marketing decision to have an active adult with a 55 community, that's possible, but we didn't want you to be able to do it for over 55 people and not do it for everybody else also. So we kind of created a parallel set of regulations that were even more expansive, that were not over 55 oriented.
So what people consider to be senior housing does not have to be age restricted. Is that?
No, it is age restricted.
Yes.
And-
Two different sections.
And, okay, so who requires age restriction for senior housing?
Nobody.
Okay, so that's my question to you.
No. If
Why are we requiring age restriction in Columbia for senior housing?
No, what we're saying is if you're going to do age restricted housing, this is what you can do.
But it would still have to follow our requirement of being 62?
No,
And now
what we're
we're not-
saying is if you do age restricted housing, this is what you can do. And if you are not going to age restricted, this is what you can do, which is pretty much the same thing.
Right.
But people have the legal ability to create a development for marketing reasons that they only wanna have, they wanna create that age restricted housing. Cause some people don't wanna live around kids.
That's,
So I don't get that.
but some people do wanna live around kids, so the bottom line is, maybe we shouldn't call it senior housing. Or have you eliminated the section that's
No.
called senior housing?
No, we have not eliminated it. Senior housing is still the only allowable discriminatory housing by law. So it's, it is a carve out. We couldn't have, I don't know, Irish only housing, or we couldn't have male only housing because that's discrimination. Senior is a carve out for essentially allowable discrimination of a certain class of people. We still have those regulations, but we created a separate set of regulations for unrestricted age, class, race, income, multifamily housing.
John,
Both of
let me use
them,
an
both of them
example.
exist.
So Woodford Village. When it was created, we couldn't have created that kind of development that was not age restricted at the time. It had to be, it was only under the senior housing development regulation that allowed this more intense development of that land. Just because it was an omission, nobody asked for developing that kind of housing for general population. So it got developed, and then we looked at it more recently and said, well, why? We can have age restricted housing if the developer makes a marketing decision that they want to target that demographic. Because the state statute allows it, but then we said, but you can also do that same level of development, and it doesn't have to be age restricted.
I guess what I'm having a hard time with is people understanding our concept of senior housing from this would be that senior housing would be age restricted.
You're reading the wrong part of the reg. There's another portion of the regs that outlines that same density of housing, but not age restricted.
I know that, but John just said they're still keeping a section of senior housing.
But the reason is exactly what Rachel said is it would be a marketing decision of the developer. And that's the only reason you would do senior housing is if you wanted to do a development that was just for seniors.
It's just another opportunity.
Yeah.
I get that, but these rules and regulations are limiting his or her potential because the people that he can market to can only be 62 or older.
No, he's limiting, let's listen to developers of me, okay? So we use the word he in that context. It's the developer's choice to aim their marketing that way. And because there's a state statute that lets you discriminate against people that are 54 and younger, they can go down that path if they want to. But they can do the same thing if they don't want to discriminate against those people and do the same level of density and same kind of development. But previously, our regulation limited that higher density development to active adult communities, which is what we're calling senior housing right now.
Just the developer's choice.
It's a developer's choice.
Yes.
They choose to do senior housing, then there's a section that tells them how they can do it.
But it's still age restricted to 62.
Yes.
If the person who owns the land and decides to develop it wants to impart that restriction on the land as they develop it and build units. If they decide. Or they can just not go that direction.
Right. I guess my thinking was just 62, it's not necessarily senior. Maybe that 62 needs to be.
It's 55 is
It's
state
55.
statute limitation.
So then shouldn't our indication, any part in here also say 55?
Ours says 62.
Yeah,
Ours says 60.
ours says 62.
Yeah.
So should it be
I'm,
lower?
can I be honest? I'm really not sure what the concern is here.
I don't understand it either, no.
Maybe I don't either. Just the
We-
62 seemed to be too old, that it should be 55, if that's what.
So
Well, so if someone wants to
The
develop
developer
a,
came into us tomorrow, and he said, I wanna go by these senior rules, but I'd like to make it 55, I have a feeling we'd approve.
Yes, absolutely, you would.
and that would be
So I
allowable
guess
under
I
the
just don't see a
general
reason
multifamily.
for having something that says 62 when it's
Just do it.
not really appropriate, that's all.
62 isn't that old.
No, it's not.
Shouldn't be any age in it.
I'm sorry, was there any, John, did you have something?
No. I think, broadly
I saw your
speaking,
hand up there.
we've expanded the options, not reduced the options. So hopefully it's okay. Developers can kind of choose their own path.
Gotcha.
I just have one question, because my recollection is that the senior housing requirements are more restrictive than the multifamily housing requirements that you've all passed. In terms of, are they exactly the same?
We tried to streamline.
No,
it.
there are some restrictions in there. I think we do have some density caps. And some restrictions on the floor areas and some setbacks. They're a little bit more restrictive.
And I think you have to have more acreage to have it. I think is that one that you have to have 10 acres? We can look at another time, but this is just something I would suggest that.
There's the reason that we had active adult community regulations is we had a developer who came to us and said, I propose these regulations so I can build more houses in less space. And we looked at the regulations that were proposed and said, yeah, these make a lot of sense. Only he promised they were all gonna be $169,000.
Yeah.
And 3 years later, when they started building the units, they were all $299 and $399.
My only suggestion is this might be something for the regulation review committee to look at, so that the regs are similar. So that you don't have the discrepancies, if you have.
So basically,
The multifamily was great in terms of saying it was, you could put as many units on as the septic and water could could support. Why not do that with the senior, for example, that just.
and if we could streamline the regulations, so we have one set of regulations, and you have one caveat on these regulations over here, you can also make them age restricted at your option.
Right.
Then we would have a very simple, more streamlined set of regulations.
Right.
And then we could let the developer pick what the restriction is and let it be a marketing decision. We don't have to get involved in that.
Yeah, that would be
The
great.
whole idea of active adult communities was really to attract a demographic, quite frankly, there was a tax advantage for the town. Housing units without kids in the school. And so a lot of towns went hog wild on it, and it probably helped them financially. You're not, I appreciate you're not, because, you won't read that anywhere. But it was
true.
It was a tax decision on the part of the town.
One of my former partners had a famous saying, says, everyone has family values, but no one wants families.
That's true. One last question, again, it's the senior housing, if I'm reading it wrong, there is a height restriction in the senior housing of 25 feet. Is that what your new multifamily also says?
It's 35 feet, and I would guess at some point we'll expand it. I've always tried to get us to consider changing that to 40 feet like they have in most towns. Now, right now, if you build a single family house with a 12 pitch roof and it has 2 stories and a walkout basement, you can't get it in at under 35 feet in average height.
So I guess I'm just asking for whatever you're calling senior, be consistent with what your multi-housing is. So that when people go online, they see the appropriate information.
So the assumption was the height restriction was going to be, because of on more dense development, we didn't want these tall, narrow structures side by side with each other on the more dense development, like Woodford Village, for example. How would those look if they were all 10 feet taller than what they are? I don't know. No, just was out of the typical approach in town at the time, but you bring up points, yeah. This is all important stuff. Okay. So the report that we had about the functions of the senior center, will this take the written testimony on that, John?
Yeah, unless there's someone there that wanted to speak to it this evening. Yeah, anything that we would get in writing is fodder for writing the chapter. We also did, as you saw, get some input from CROG, our regional planning agency, about their housing efforts. And yeah, we'll incorporate all of this. And the proposal would be that we would basically produce another chapter on housing in advance of next month's discussion. And we'll hold on. I want to be right about what's the next chapter for discussion.
I really all of the programs that we need to mention the POCD for senior services and transportation to enable their potential for grant applications and highlighting what they do for the town and have done.
All right. Yes. So next month's discussion, we'll draft the housing chapter for review next month. Next month's discussion will be on economic development. So I would certainly welcome some suggestions on people we should be soliciting for their participation and input for next month.
I think, our economic development committee is one step away from non-functional, isn't it?
No problem.
Does anyone know anything about it?
Has been, but it's getting better. It's getting better.
Okay.
It's a lot of work effort to try and.
Yeah, I talked to a member yesterday and they have a tough time getting a quorum on occasion.
Yeah.
But also more controversy like planning and zoning.
As for economic development, with the Conservation and Agriculture Commission, will have a chance to speak, because I think we have some ideas on tying both conservation and agriculture activities into ways that the town can be economically developed going forward.
Sure. That makes sense.
Okay.
That be again at the second meeting in October?
Yeah, the 27th, October 27th.
Thank you.
We good? Nothing under new business, nothing under regulation revisions, anything under communication reports. The only thing I saw was the communication related to the public hearing.
Yeah, no, I had no additional correspondence.
Anything else anyone wants to bring up on the commission?
No, I just hope we put a sufficient pressure on applicants to get some resolution.
Okay. This is no public hearing on the one that we're trying to put pressure on. You can say that. Anything else anyone would like to bring up tonight to us? Yes, Pat.
At Shimshik, Cherry Valley Road. I know about the survey, John. And when you have stakeholders that you're sending letters to, do you report sometime what the survey is saying? The people who took the survey have input into what's happening in the plan of conservation and development? Or
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand the question. The surveys are done from primarily anonymously, so I have no
Right.
means to follow up with any individual respondent.
Correct, but do you bring that body of language or the results here so that people know what people were like? Do we, is
Probably
there?
not yet, is the answer.
Yeah.
It
The
won't
the
come
surveys,
there.
the survey is still open. I've done some preliminary analysis of it, but we still are getting 2 or 3 responses a week, so they're still trickling in. At some point, probably sooner than later, we'll cut it off and sort of do a formal report, but that'd be in a month or 2, I would think.
I think the last time around, with this spreadsheet, it's identified 5% this, 10% this.
Yeah. And I've done a preliminary analysis of particularly of the open-ended responses. At the end of the survey, we asked what is something you hope will happen in Columbia over the next 10 years, and what are the things you're worried about in Columbia. I have done a summary of that, of the results so far, that I'd be happy to share, in advance of the next meeting if you'd like. But again, we're still getting some responses in, so I didn't want to fully cut it off. But I'd be happy to share that. Sure.
Anything under executive session? Nothing that I'm aware of.
No.
Okay, I'll make a motion, we adjourn. Second. All those in favor?
Thank you, Mary Kay.
Hey, but